long time ago, in a YouTube world full of keyboard warriors, many monsters and trolls lurked in the chat rooms. They thrived on arguments amongst each other until one day, a heroine rose from the ashes. She was made from the tears of beta bitches and the sweat of alpha male gym guys. Throughout the centuries, this keyboard warrior princess showed up in many forms. She slayed many demons along the way. By the light of the moon, she led the simp army into battle. Wielding her sword, she fought through the dark forests. With each new era, the monsters evolved. The keyboard warrior princess grew stronger, with new skills to bring them down. The world around her advanced, but so did she. Her heroism became known to society as technology advanced. And with each new generation, she had to learn how to blend in to keep her identity hidden. Now known as the Raging Tomato, this keyboard warrior princess fights for justice in every debate. She fights for freedom, for moderator bias, and she fights for your ability to battle on an open panel for your beliefs. She protects the simp troopers from destruction. She fights to create peace among troll wars. She storms the battle zones without hesitation and leaves the battleground with her pockets full of souls. Are you ready to battle your fellow trolls? Are you ready for a moderator to give you time to talk? Are you ready for justice, peace, and a fair fight? Tune in every Monday night to watch your friends duke out their issues, or join the open panel so that you can fight the good fight and find resolution with your peers.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sarah the Raging Tomato here, reporting to you live the news from the panel sphere. Actually, we have Mod Monday this evening, and of course, I brought the lovely Michelle along with me. She's in avatar mode, so I made her little, because all that matters right now is your voice. Right, Michelle?
That's right.
It is a sexy voice, though.
Thank you.
I
I think I just
started-
totally sniffed as you brought me up. I was like,
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful treat for you tonight. We have the uh, kind of a sensitive topic, but it is a good topic, I think. And with the panelists that we're bringing on, I think it's going to be a great conversation. The topic this evening is euthanasia, and we've got a lot of subcategories to go along with it as well. So I hope you buckle up, tune in, and you're ready for a ride. The first thing I want to throw out there is our clips channel. And Nightbot is going to be ever so kind to drop it in the chat for you throughout the evening. But for right now, I want you all to back out of here, click on that link, and go hit like, subscribe, whatever. And this way, you're going to get all of the Moderator Monday clips. They're going to be coming to you as quickly as I can get them out. It takes a lot of work to edit. I have one more waiting for me to push out again. Not a lot over there going on yet, but it is building, but it's going to build even faster if all 2,200 of you and whatever amount of people go over there right now, click that link, hit the subscribe button, come back, report back, salute, aye, aye, Captain, I am done. I've subscribed. So let me know that you've done that. That'd be great. Please go do that. And then you're going to get all of the fun little highlights, funny moments, and just goofy, crazy stuff that's going on over there. So do that. Do that now. We're going to be running a special drill tonight. It's a little offbeat of what we normally do, but Michelle and I both have two very different things going on this evening. Number one, it is homecoming season for the bratty tomato, and she wants a pretty little dress and pretty little nails. So I have to, go and do that thing with her, and that gets a little expensive. So I have about $100 Cash App dono goal for me going on. Specifically Cash App. Okay. And Michelle also has something else going on. Do you want to tell them about that, Michelle?
Hi.
Very
Yeah.
sad story.
So it is really sad. I think I need you to cue music.
Yes, you are cued.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. I need sad music because I don't, if you know me, I don't show emotion on YouTube. So I need the background to help me out. But anyway, I normally don't ask like directly for donations or anything like that, but I will for this particular one thing because I've not been the same. I lost my bird. I think it was on the 9th. My bird Enzo is now our background for today's stream. And I was really sad about it. Like, you could ask Sarah. I literally have not been the same for the past like couple of weeks that she's been gone. I have done everything I can to like attempt to find her and locate her. I definitely don't need any help or suggestions with that. I'm kind of coming to terms with the fact that she's probably gone and I won't see her again. And I'm lonely. I miss my friend. She was like my best friend. And I'm sad. So I am taking donations to the new bird fund. If I rescue one, it'll go to the vetting, new toys, stuff like that. There's things that you can't share bird to bird, so I will need new gear regardless. But like I'm looking for a new bird, basically, is why I'm asking for donations. And yeah, so if you want to donate to me and I don't know, make me feel happy again, then you can donate to my Cash App, and it will go directly to my bird fund. So that was it. So rest in peace, Enzo. I'm sorry you got hawk fooded.
Hawk fooded.
I think that's what happened. Like we have resting hawks and owls outside of my property, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened to her. Although I can dream and think that maybe she ran into some lady gardening, and she's such a great bird that that lady wanted to be keeping her. So yeah.
Yes. Do you have a specific dono goal for our birdie fund?
I mean, anything is great. Like I'm probably gonna get like your basic pet bird. I'm not looking for anything crazy, but anything helps. I don't really want to put a goal to it. Like it's not like that. It's not like a need or anything, you know. But I don't know.
It is a need. It is a need. That was your best friend.
It really was.
That was your best friend. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I can say, I believe she told me earlier it'll cost around, I think it was $400 or $500 to get a new bird. Like that includes all the toys and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, it'd be about $500 to get what I need.
Exactly. So, oh look, Nightbot's already got us over here.
Aw.
Nightbot's rocking out. Nightbot just knew when it was time. But what we're going to be doing, okay, we can get rid of the sad music now.
Yeah, get rid.
Sad moments.
Sorry. I lost my pet rock. I'm taking donations as well. Face, Doug. Oh yeah. It really was so sad when she flew away, though. Like, oh my god, that sucked. That's like,
listen, I've never seen Michelle so down. It was a lot of conversations, a lot of sad texts, and a lot of sad phone calls. But what we've decided to do for you this evening is to give back a little bit. I think it's about 96% of my viewers are gentlemen. So what we're going to do is if you Cash App either one, we'll get that immediately. And we will interrupt the show for that Cash App. But not only that, we will come up with a beautiful commercial like one of these.
This message is sponsored in part by...
Insert your name there. And that's what we're doing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So anytime we get a Cash App, now it has to be $10 or more for the Cash App for this to happen this way. So if you want to super chat, that's fine. That's going to go in the regular direction. When the panel starts, we'll only interrupt every 10 minutes during the hot seat rounds. However, for the Cash Apps that are $10 or more, we will stop everything of what we're doing. You'll get one of those sexy commercials, which I made quite a few of them, okay? And I even made one for the ladies as well. But you will get to interrupt the show with one of those sexy lady videos, and we will read your super chat. Now, I do know Cash App can show real names. If you don't want us to say a name, then please, in the comment of the Cash App, chat thing, put in who it's from. Okay. That way we can say that name and not whatever name that's coming through, because we're not going to say whatever name's coming through. That stays private between us, and that's it. So, another little sneak peek for you fellas. Cash App, $10 or more. Interrupt the panel.
This message is sponsored in part by.
There you go. That's what you get. Not only are those two beautiful ladies part of the commercial breaks, but there are a few others there as well. So, yes, have fun with that. I hope it helps. I hope it incentivizes you to help donate to the Homecoming Fund and also to the new.
We got a donation, actually.
Oh,
Thank
we
you
did.
so much. Good one.
Would you like to read it out loud?
I'm going to protect privacy because we forgot to mention Cash App will kind of send you names. If you don't put your screen name in there, I'm not going to say it, but I'm pretty sure this is from Good One. Thank you so much. It just says for the bird. If you put in your screen name to tell me who it's from, I'll say who it's from. If not, I'm going to keep it anonymous. I'm like very sure this is from Good One though, and that is so amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, if that is you, Grid One, this one's for you. Everybody say thank you, Grid One.
This message is sponsored in part by
Grid One.
Grid One. Also, I got one from Bender. He gets a little booty as well. Thank you so much. You guys.
This message is sponsored in part by.
Support the bird fund, ladies and gentlemen. And
yeah, you guys just literally made it so I could get a bird, and I appreciate that so much. And like, I'm literally ready to cry. Holy shit! Oh,
I miss her so much. And thank you to you, and shout out to anybody who does donate, especially to Michelle. This is a sad story. We don't like it, and it is for a good cause. That was her best friend, so we need to buy Michelle a best friend, please. Please do that.
So amazing.
Make the girl a happy girl.
They already did. Like, honestly, I really wasn't expecting like anything from YouTube, but that was so sweet, and I appreciate that so much.
It's a sad story. Like, this is a really good cause tonight. This whole show is dedicated to Enzo, ladies and gentlemen. Did it send from my?
We totally didn't tell you. It sent like your name. We didn't say it. I was pretty sure that was from you though. And I appreciate that so much. Good one.
No, yeah. Either way, she got you. We keep privacy. Privacy is very important over here, and especially in YouTube. That's why we don't typically run the Cash App stuff, because I know people are afraid of that. And so
I won't say who it's from unless you put in a screen name. And yeah, we got you.
Mark Lossman says, "Hey Sarah, any tips for getting over my ex-wife? Heartbroken, miss my children. Well, tune in for the commercial breaks. We'll help you get over it real fast." But thank you, Grid One, for starting it off, and thank you for Bender for keeping it going. We appreciate
so much.
You guys. All right, so what we're going to do is Michelle's going to head back to the backstage. We're going to get started on this video that we have queued up for Euthanasia, and we're going to, I think our panelists, they'll start heading to the backstage around 9:10. So when they get back there, all will be well, and I will be a happy girl that everybody shows up on time. And if they don't, you're all gonna be wishing euthanasia was legal. All right, Michelle, say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you all again. That was so nice. I really appreciate you, Sarah, and for letting me take part and doing that for me. That was really kind of you as well.
Absolutely. And she's going to stay backstage so that if she gets any more Cash Apps, she will be able to jump back in and interrupt whatever is going on in that moment. We will play another sexy lady for you and give you a shout out and whatever it is you say in the comments. So
thank you, Grid.
Thank you, Grid. All right, back to this. Ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and get my screen going. I hope you're all doing well. I didn't get to do my normal shout out this evening like I always do, but it was for a good cause, and we're all about that. And I think you can all live without it. Hold on, I need to share. Okay. I got that one full screen. All right, this one should be queued up. Hopefully, we don't get any lags this evening because that's really obnoxious. I absolutely cannot stand it when it lags. Let me turn the music down for you. And now we can all breathe. And those who are hanging out over in Caucasian Sasquatch, you're probably wondering why you're here. You're here because he is connected backstage. He is one of our hot seaters for the evening, so he will be tuning in later. He will be the first one on for the hot seat. He was extra, extra early tonight, and we like that. We like those people. All right, euthanasia. What do we think about it? Are there boundaries? Are there boundaries? Let's get into it. And I got to turn my volume on.
Hello, you've reached the Provincial Health Services Authority telephone line for medical assistance in dying.
The countdown to Joe.
Oh, I did want to say one more thing. I apologize, folks. Because this is an incredibly sensitive and triggering topic, I'm going to repeat myself later when the panelists come on, but I do want everybody to be mindful, especially in the chat, that this is incredibly triggering for a lot of people. There are hotlines out there if you do feel the need that you can't go on any further. And if you need to reach out to somebody, please do so. We're here to help our peers. We are a community. And to our mods on both mine and Caucasian Sasquatch side, and for any other mods, for anybody else who decides to connect their channel, please be mindful that anything that is above and beyond, like breaking TOS or just could be triggering to people, please just remove the comment. That would be incredibly great, and give them a warning shot, so on and so forth. You know the drill, but this is super sensitive. We have to be sensitive in how we talk about this. So I ask for everybody to oblige and go along with it. Okay. I appreciate your cooperation in advance. Thank you.
Joni Cowie's death has begun.
Your call is important to us.
If you call the number on the government website, they will provide doctors that will sign off for you.
Like many disabled Canadians, she is stuck in a cycle of poverty and despair.
It's no hope for anybody in Ontario. That's a good boy.
So she's planning to end her life
Up.
with the government's help.
They can have me dead in 90 days. That's what I was told.
Like in my case, the problem is not really the disability. It is the poverty.
Les Landry is in the same position, wanting to live, but seeing no other option than death.
These two are for my asthma. This is for my COPD. Since when did we stop looking at the value of human life in this country?
It's a question people with disabilities and their advocates ask constantly.
We can organize medical assistance in dying in approximately 2 weeks in a very organized and efficient manner. Yet it is so difficult to get my patients the social support that they need to live well. That is morally distressing.
All right. So just starting off, we're given two people who are financially just unable to get through a day, but also medically they're disabled or just have a lot of stuff piling up in terms of their medical needs. Who no longer wish to go forward. It would be easier just to not deal with it in that aspect. And what the other gentleman was saying was that if you wanted to do euthanasia, I believe this is in Canada. If you wanted to do euthanasia, it's a fast track line. Like you could basically get yourself lined up and set in a matter of 2 weeks, but yet getting care and support for other medical needs requires a lot more effort, a lot more red tape, and a lot of more time. And in a lot of senses, I know our healthcare systems in all different countries all have their issues and things going on. But one thing I feel like is the common denominator is time is of the essence, and resources. And it's almost disappointing, that our medical care puts us in such a position where it's easier to get put down, I'd say, than it is to actually get well. it's very disturbing that that's a problem. And the fact that we prioritize one over the other almost makes me wonder, do our countries, or in this instance, it would be Canada, do they care about the health and wellness or people getting better? Or is it easier just to, when a horse breaks a leg, you put it down instead of healing it? So it's a matter of like, how how much do you provide back to society? Like, now we're putting like worth on humans. So, little thought process.
At Vistaprint, we print all the signs that help your small.
Sorry. I need to pay for premium. I know I'm cheap.
In Windsor, Ontario, Joni deals with the grinding financial pain of living in poverty during an affordability crisis, compounded by the physical pain of disability.
I have severe asthma that's turned into COPD and Guillain-Barré syndrome, as well as cancer. I also just recently fractured my back. I'm tired
Ouch.
a lot. The pain is excruciating. He told me.
Joni lives with her 3
Doggies.
dogs and her daughter, who is also disabled. They have no family support, so they have to find a way to survive on $1,228 a month Joni gets from Ontario's Disability Support Program, plus a few $100s more for her daughter. Even with subsidized housing, it's not nearly enough.
We have about $59 left to buy groceries in a month because our home, we have to have housing insurance, rent, hydro is high, gas is high. I get angry at people who say you need to budget better because I just want to say to them, go to hell. I really do. And I don't swear very often.
Here's the thing. Joni's financial struggle is not at all unique. During the pandemic, the government decided working Canadians needed at least $2,000 a month to live, while the disabled were forced to get by on much less.
They had CERB, but not for people with disabilities. People with disabilities have been put on the back burner, and nobody gives a damn about them.
Disability supports vary from province to province. On the low end, imagine surviving on $705 a month, as people with disabilities do in New Brunswick. Or
I wonder what the cost of living is, but I'm sure that that's probably not not going to still be enough. I mean, it just sounds a little ridiculous. And a kind reminder to everybody, I'm going to drop the link again for the Clips channel. Please go hit it, subscribe to it. We want to build that one up as well. We're having a lot of fun with it. And more videos are going to be pumping out. So you want to be the one that sees it. So all of our Mod Mondays will be clipped and put over there, plus a little extra fun stuff too.
how about living on $1,358 a month in Vancouver, where the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,500? The most recent numbers from Statistics Canada reveal 41% of Canadians living under the poverty line have a disability. That's more than 1.5 million people, about the population of Montreal.
That sounds like a country problem. I mean, that sounds like a societal issue for them if that is the
Our
case.
social assistance rates place people with disabilities below the poverty line, approximately 25% below the poverty line. So honestly, this is legislated poverty for people with disabilities. This is the kind of care that's needed.
Dr. Nahid Dasani is a palliative care physician and professor of community and family medicine at the University of Toronto. He gave us a tour of the East Toronto neighborhood where he offers street-based care, often to people with disabilities living in poverty.
Many of the people we care for are dealing with serious illnesses, but often they're very sick because of their social circumstances. There are significant health outcomes if we don't address those issues and treat those issues.
The result, Dr. Dosani is increasingly discussing MAID, or medical assistance in dying, with his patients. Not necessarily because they want to die, but because they see no way out of the twin miseries of poverty and disability.
When people are living in such a situation where they're structurally placed in poverty, is medical assistance in dying really a choice, or is it coercion?
Under Canada,
That's a good point. And that's why I said, if the horse breaks its leg, do you just put it down? Like, do you not see the value? Obviously a horse is kind of useless in that aspect, but a human still offers something to society, to their family, to their friends, to their community. I mean, in theory, right? Um, but is it are we devaluing humans that much to where we put them in a position where it's like, we're going to force you into such a position where you kind of have no other way, and in that aspect, it's kind of like only the strong will survive. Is that what we want? I don't know if that's necessarily what we want in the world, because if it was that easy, everybody would do it. Um, if somebody doesn't like the hair in my eyes. Oh my, so much anger. Oh, man. Hi, Dad. I really feel for Joni. She lives in Canada, which has socialized medicine for Americans who think Obamacare is the system we should have. Think again. Yeah, a good point. Everybody say hi, Dad. The grumpy tomato. Anyways, but it's just kind of like, are we being, well, not we, but would people in this predicament be kind of like, as he said, coercion and kind of forced against the wall, where it's like there is no other direction? What else are you going to do? And if you think that, you know, you're disabled, you have no other means, or you're incapable of doing, you're disabled and you can't work. Like, if you're in that position, then yeah, I mean, what other avenues can you take? I guess you could be a streamer, right? I'm pretty sure the way that guy was talking, I think he does a Twitter or something. I don't know if we hit that part yet, but I remember him doing that. Looks like he's got
His first medical assistance in dying law passed in 2016. A person's death had to be, quote, reasonably foreseeable to be approved. Last year, eligibility was expanded to people who have a, quote, serious and irreversible illness or disability that causes intolerable suffering. Now, people like Joni qualify. On social media, it's a constant conversation.
But almost everyone is like, yeah, just kind of waiting to see, how it is in 6 months. Going to see how it is in 8 months. We'd like to make it to a year, but I don't think we're going to make it to a year. I cried a lot at night. I usually stay up a lot at night. I pray a lot.
In Medicine Hat, Alberta, Les Landry is contemplating MAID and leaving behind his beloved service dog, Annie. Les has been growing steadily poorer and more desperate since his career as a truck driver was derailed more than a decade ago.
Disability can happen to anyone at any time. I was doing good. I was making good money, 80, 85 grand a year. I developed a hernia. And then that's when the surgery happened. That's when the blood pressure went out of control. That's when I developed epilepsy and the 3 mini strokes, and things just fell apart. Good girl.
On Alberta's disability program, Les was receiving $1,685 a month, plus benefits for his service dog, special diet, and medications.
This is my blister pack.
Along with timely donations from strangers on Twitter, he was just scraping by.
That's for a week.
Then in May, he turned 65. In the bureaucratic shuffle, he was transitioned from disability to senior status. And
you hold a good point here, Pinkerton. Notice how fast they are willing to help people die rather than help them live. And that's kind of like, Michelle, that's kind of like the point that, it's like, well, if you have if your resources are so well built to basically fast pass these people through, and to be able to provide the funding and everything for that, then why can't you redirect that to actually giving them the medical supplies they need and the ability to live and thrive and do well? I feel like there are, other things going on here. Hi, Ticky Tack. I see you backstage. I know any of our other panelists will be joining us as well here shortly, and we should be kicking off here in about 12 minutes. I'm so excited. Feel free to connect back there if you want. Totally up to you.
I have to jump in. I got another super chat.
Ooh, hold on. Let's give them another sexy one. Oops.
This message is sponsored in part by...
Go ahead, Michelle.
So, Bender, tell me to shave my arms. Okay, it says from Bender, tell me to shave my arms. I don't know which name I'm supposed to be giving this to, but whoever this is directed to, shave your arms, and thank you for this, the donation to the Bird Fund. I really appreciate that.
Aw,
Okay, I'll go away now. Thank you.
thank you. No, I'm glad. I'm so glad. I gotta put my thing back up on screen here. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. I guess it was probably like timing for the type of videos that we're playing for the commercial breaks is probably not the best to impede on such a serious. Maybe it is a good thing because it lightens the mood a little. Okay.
Lost some benefits.
I am no longer a person with a disability. I'm a senior citizen in poverty.
In the past, Les planned ahead, made extra payments on his bills. But he's no longer able to do that and is forced to rely even more on donations.
The big picture is if I didn't plan ahead and make them extra payments, I'd probably be homeless. I cannot live the rest of my life on the goodwill of friends on Twitter. No.
Les, Joni, and many other disabled Canadians who share their stories with Global News say they aren't against medically assisted dying in principle, but they say Canada should have raised disability benefits before expanding access to it.
Have some disabilities and living in pain. They targeted people with disabilities and people with chronic pain. And I said, if you're going to do that, you have a responsibility to also lift the benefits and increase the quality of life for people with disabilities, the people you are targeting.
We should prioritize healthcare and social support that promotes the human rights of all.
Trudeau Lemons is a professor of health law and policy at the University of Toronto. He has been warning the Canadian government for years that the speed and scope of its plans to expand access to assisted dying was a violation of the rights of disabled Canadians.
Out of a misplaced form of compassion, we think that persons with disabilities have a reason to end their life earlier than others. This basically is discriminatory.
Only about a dozen.
Another great point. Is it discriminatory? Because, like, are you kind of harnessing that in? Are you putting those people in that position? Like, keep them just tall enough to stand above the water to where you have to tread the water on your own and you're eventually going to tire out. I do think there is some kind of coercion built into that, maybe not intentionally, but as a sidestep that it's possible. And my son came down to say goodnight, and he wanted me to show you all his little dude. I don't know his name. I don't think he has a name, but he's the little red dude. But yeah, he's coming by to say hello. He's hanging with me for the rest of the night. Okay. But yeah, it's almost disappointing that we put people in such a position where you kind of have no other direction. You know, like the only way is down at that point.
Dozen countries have legalized doctor-assisted death. Lemon says the few that allow it for patients who aren't terminally ill have stronger protections than Canada against coercion and suffering caused by poverty.
In my view, we're actually failing to implement even some of the most basic safeguards that at least exist in those countries.
Belgium and the Netherlands have had assisted dying since the early 2000s. In both countries, doctors are forbidden from suggesting it to patients. They must also exhaust all other options before approving it.
We're getting rid of this idea that we'll first try the least interventionist measures. I find that actually quite extraordinary that we've forgotten, I think, the seriousness of ending the life of a person as a measure to relieve their suffering.
As Canada has opened up eligibility, the number of cases has shot up. In 2021, more than 10,000 Canadians opted for a medically assisted death. That's a 32% increase from the year before. The numbers have increased faster here than any other country where it's legal, including the Netherlands and Belgium.
So even though those countries have been practicing medical assistance in dying or euthanasia for 20 years, they are at the rate that we have after only a couple of years.
There is no way of knowing how many of those deaths could have been avoided with the right supports, but we know there are some. Recently in Canada, an Ontario woman suffering from chemical sensitivities reportedly opted for a medically assisted death because she couldn't afford appropriate housing. And in another troubling case, A Veterans Affairs employee suggested it to a veteran who was seeking help for PTSD and a traumatic brain injury.
Often I hear arguments, well, this is not impacting that many people. But you know what? If it affects one person, that's way too many people. And we need to do something about that.
The controversy surrounding MAID is not going away. In March, the government plans to expand access yet again to include people with mental illnesses. More support may be coming. A new Canada Disability benefit is before Parliament for the second time. It was dropped last year when a federal election was called.
Sit.
But Joni and Les are skeptical. We already know seniors will not be eligible.
This government has a history on how they treat people with disabilities, 18 to 65. Well, that excludes me and anybody in my situation.
So sorry. Please speak up to your member of parliament, to your members of provincial parliament, because people with disabilities don't ask for their disability.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I just can't see me living like this for the rest of my life.
All right. I really feel like this is going to be a great topic tonight. It's incredibly interesting, a little sad. I mean, now this is just kind of one piece of it. It's just kind of like one side piece of the whole conversation. Now, I would really like the panel, and I see they're all backstage. We've got Primal Studies, we've got Reservoir, we've got Rachel's Ghost, and we've got Ticky Tack, all set and ready to go. So I'll bring them all up here in just a minute. But I'm super excited. And if any one of you backstage would like to hit the restream button in the top right corner, feel free to do so. We love sending it out. And let you go ahead and get your free content while you're here, because you are the ones doing all of the work. But I would really like to see the panelists go down the route of, number one, let's just start with the basic question. Is euthanasia okay? Is it okay to do? Should we allow it? That's question number one. And then we can go into some other subcategories. I'd like to hear, number one, for anybody that's disabled, right? Because disability doesn't necessarily mean you're terminally ill, but it means you are, for the rest of your life, going to be in a certain predicament. Then we're going to go down the route of like anybody with mental illnesses. I'd like to hear the panel speak to that concept. So people who have basically lifelong mental illnesses, things that affect them, whether it's like schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, especially like depression. And the question I have is, are we allowing these people to make these decisions with a sound mind if they already don't have a sound mind? So I'd really like to hear on that. And then we can, and then, then we can tap into kind of some other avenues. So if everybody backstage is ready, if I could just get a thumbs up from everyone. I see 1, 2, 3, I think Ticky Tack and Reservoir. I believe you're off screen right now, but I'm going to presume we're okay. And I think we should get started here. What do you guys think? All right.
Release the Kraken!
Just in the bathroom. I'm literally going on the thing now, so I'm sorry.
No, we'll go ahead and mute him for a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're excited. I think we've got a great panel for tonight. I think we have a wonderful topic picked out, and I'm super excited to hear what everybody has to say. Let's start up in the top. I've got Rachel's Ghost, I've got Reservoir, I've got Primal Studies, and I've got Ticky Tack, all here to give you a nice little fun debate. I think, Reservoir, are you there with us now?
Sorry about that.
Oh,
1 second.
That's okay. Take your time.
Here, how are you?
Oh, wonderful. How are you?
Good.
Perfect. All right. So, what I'd like to do is to start with the panel. And if you could take a few minutes, each one of you, to introduce yourself, and then also give your stance on just the basic question of whether you think euthanasia should we allow it, yes or no. So, let's go ahead and start there with you, Rachel.
Rachel's Ghost, music channel. Hard to see here, guitar up there, a lot of records and stuff. Do that, and Sarah and I cross paths somewhere, somehow, and we become friends. She's just wonderful, and really happy to be here to discuss the topic of euthanasia. And I'm on the against euthanasia side of the coin, and the reasons for that will become obvious as we move along.
Perfect. All right, Reservoir. Am I saying that right, Reservoir?
You can say whatever you want. I deliberately leave it obtuse because I don't really do a single type of content. I'm a variety creator. My name is Reservoir, whatever you want to say. I stream from 3 to 8 p.m. on Twitch, YouTube, Kick, and some other platforms. Reservoir on all of them. So check me out. I am pro euthanasia, and again, my reasons will become known shortly.
Fair enough. And to you, Primal Studies.
Hey everybody, Matt here. Primal Studies, kind of a general manosphere, self-improvement YouTuber, I guess, if you will. Background, registered nurse, personal trainer, Army veteran, and I am on the pro side of euthanasia.
Okay. And to you, Tiki Tac.
I am Tiki Tac. So I don't generally run YouTube channel, but I show up on many panelist debates, and I am part of the Crucible crew.
Perfect. And then your stance on euthanasia?
Yes. So I'm against.
Fair enough. All right. Would everybody would somebody like to go ahead and start, or I can prompt the questions?
Oh, I'll start. Why not?
Go for it.
Okay. So my position, I come from a Christian ethos, value system. So life is critical. This is why we're pro-life when it comes to the abortion question. And so because of that belief system, because we value life, we want to see it continue. We believe that God is the arbiter in that area, and that we shouldn't take it upon ourselves to do so, notwithstanding issues of long suffering and pain and discomfort. But our look is towards God. Now, within the context of a secular society, we've seen the value placed on human life minimized and looked upon more that we are just simply another organism on the planet, and that we show mercy, quote that term, mercy, to our cats and dogs. Therefore, we should extend that same mercy to humans. And what I would argue is that we can medicate. I have personal history. My mother was dying, and the doctor there, I live in Canada, so a lot of what you were showing earlier is relevant to my situation being in Canada, where we are seeing the biggest fear that we have is that the autonomy of our own self-determination. The idea is that, oh, grandma went out on her own terms with great dignity. And so we have a language, we have an infrastructure, a social infrastructure around this whole transformative process now, where our society has changed from this pro-life situation, where now it's because we've devalued ourselves as the made in God's image kind of concept to just simply a biological matter. And therefore, like we would a dog or cat, put out of its misery. But the doctor to my mother, my personal testimony is that the doctor talked to her and to us, my mother was out of it, and said, we really encourage that you give us the right to take her off, and we suggest that she go now. And we said, what do you know, whoa, they were very anxious for us to kind of have done with her and write her off. And we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that. And so because of that, the doctor, my mom rallied, and the doctor said, this is, wow, unusual, really sorry, you know, that, but yeah, I can see that she's survived. And I feel bad about it. You know, he was apologetic. So that's problematic. The whole idea, though, is independent of all things. It's that the value must be on life. We must value life. If we devalue it, then the control and these decisions, the decision-making mechanism, it's a slippery slope. It may start with us going, mother and grandmother or whoever went out on their own recognizance. That right will be taken away from us. Ultimately, it's going to be dictated by the state. And I would argue that higher moral values than human life, such as the benefit of the planet. There's a great Glenn Beck video from the World Economic Forum where you've got this elderly woman saying, I have lived a good life. And it goes on with a series of seniors going, the planet cannot sustain itself with the population the way it is. I have lived a good life. That was the tagline on it. And what happens is that with that message, without saying it, was trying to indicate, hey, the planet can't sustain anymore. You old people at a certain point, to be determined by who, I don't know, you tell me, is going to ultimately going to be taken away for us. Why? From a higher moral standard of planetary survival based on challenges in the area of climate change. And the other one last thought about this is also some of the decision making where people go, well, this person has chosen to die. There's a fella named John T. Godfrey, born in Montreal, Canada, World War II fighter pilot. He died in 1958. He was a state senator for Rhode Island, if I remember correctly. And he ended up dying of ALS. But he tells the story. Here's a fighter pilot. He was in the famous prison camp, World War II, Stalag Luft 3, which was scene of the Great Escape. That guy was assigned to that prison of war camp. He describes in his testimony of having ALS that he was watching a commercial and he starts breaking down in tears because this woman couldn't get her husband's shirt cleaned. And so here's a guy that was in prison, fought the Nazis during World War II, but his emotional state was being compromised by his medical condition to the extent where, crises and problems are heightened. They're out of context and out of proportion to the actual reality that is facing them. And one final comment here before I release my portion of this, my intro, is my younger brother took himself out. So he unlived himself in 1995. And, he made that decision. And I equate anything else along the same line. Like, people don't realize the damage it's going to do. And I do say this, the emotional damage to loved ones, you never get over it. You love your family. But the other thing is that if he had hung on, he was battling alcoholism. So there were attending factors to destabilizing his own mental well-being at this time. But I will say this, that, life is a series of tunnels, a train going through a series of tunnels. There's dark periods, there's depressing times, there's challenging times, there's familial loss, all sorts of problems. But hang tough, kids. You get through it ultimately. And as a Christian person, I just go, put your faith in God, look towards God, and use, the advances in medicine for pain control and this sort of thing. My mother, she did not die quickly. She died over a 3-day period. She was having a hard time breathing, and they just medicated her with morphine, I assume, to maintain it. So that's my take on things.
Floor is open.
So I actually also have an intro on this.
Sure.
Yeah, so I should be able to do this in under 3 minutes. But so first, I'd like to begin to say that, Sarah, thank you very much for setting up this debate. You are a wonderful person for allowing us to do this. And on that, I will begin with presenting the most common position to support medically assisted assistance in dying, which I'll refer to MAID throughout this debate. MAID is a treatment to end suffering. Whether it be framed on terminal illness or a mental illness, the reason why come from ending to suffering one's pain. Sorry, let me repeat that. The reasons for why coming to end the suffering and one's pain and mental anguish or burden as they impose onto others. Sorry, I completely messed that up. But
that's okay.
I'll continue on. I, however, do not believe that MAID is a treatment to end the suffering. as one who faces the death can become the worst punishment and cause of ultimate anguish. One might say, well, these people want MAID. They are agreeing to hoping, and hoping for the cause to happen. But I ask, what are the moments up to unconsciousness? How do we know if the patient has changed their mind? We know from IBSA Foundation for Scientific Research, brain activity continues up to 30 seconds after cardiac arrest. How do we know the consent is still there after cardiac arrest up to brain death? Now I can hear the counters. Why should we care that much? They have already stated clearly that they want MAID. But I would point to the studies produced by American Journal of Psychiatry and Journal of Hospital of Psychiatry that show that people who have attempted self-termination, 80% do not attempt again. It's like they found a new reason to live through their suffering. With knowing these facts, how can we be certain that a person demanding MAID actually wants it up until brain death? And if they find the desire to live after treatment has been administered with no way of reversing the treatment would produce the worst amount of suffering a person can face. For a treatment that was advertised as relief from suffering has now become the ultimate punishment of suffering before death. Due to the risk involved in causing more suffering to those who change their mind during treatment, I cannot support any forms of MAID.
Okay.
That's
Floor
it.
is open.
Yeah, I believe in liberty. I think the quality of liberty is such that someone should have near total control over one's own autonomy. It's a simple choice to allow people that which they desire that does not bring harm to others, with regards, of course, to mental health, poverty, and other detriments. Allowing euthanasia gives people control over that fate and choice to abide by whatever creed or cause that they believe in. I think that these arguments of Christianity are fundamentally unchristian in my belief, because when I listen to this, all I get to hear is somebody being told that now you must walk the path. You are getting that choice eliminated from you. You're going ahead and stepping in on God's own hand, where He gave us that free will to go and do those things. So I reject that outright. I find that honestly kind of disgusting that somebody would go ahead and claim such things while also trying to rewrite God's plan. But I found that to become most of the arguments from this. When you come to the secular lens, I do feel that a lot of this that we're going ahead and going to end up complaining here is we're going to be conflating that self-termination with this 80% to the same thing that people that are actually seeking this assistance out, as well as the precautions that we take to ensure that somebody is a candidate for this, somebody who is terminally ill, someone who has a quality of life that is unsustainable. And again, we can go ahead and look at the video that Sarah provided if we want to have a conversation about poverty and how the West goes ahead and allows its people that are at its weakest function, between kids, disabled, elderly, and how we do not go ahead and take care of our people. I am more than willing to have that conversation. But when it comes down to this, that is something that we need to put aside unless we want to have a much longer talk about our inadequate use of resources to take care of the individuals within our society. That said, I'm very interested in having this conversation, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'll cap it off and we'll kind of get to it then. I agree with a lot of the perspectives that were shared already. I think ultimately, at least in the countries that we mostly reside in, there's a lot of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, freedom to choose your own path. And just because one person's religious alignment doesn't align with yours doesn't mean that everybody has to follow the same path. So that being said, I think that putting in a blanket thing for everybody in a society based on one perspective is short-sighted and should not be the only way of doing things. It is a way and people can choose their way, but I think that ultimately people should have the freedom to choose if they live or die.
Floor is open, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, again, to reiterate, I think as Reservoir was saying, that's like the idea of autonomy is a nice thing within a secular context, so we can dispel of any religiosity or any appeal to any spiritual oversight on this, just simply looking at the question of autonomy. My concern, Rez, is as time advances, as time moves on, that the autonomy that we initially had that opens the door, that provided the Fuller Brushman, I'm dating myself, foot in the door, pry the door open to allow us to go out with dignity, as you were, with all whatever language you want to use to enforce that thought, is going to be ultimately removed from us. And as I stated, why, for some other higher moral reason, as dictated unilaterally by the government down to its people. You got to go, Grandma. There's no room for you no more. We can't afford you. You're a drain on societal resources. We don't have the room anymore. In fact, I was just watching a news report again in Canada where they're moving people that with long-term illness out of the hospitals. They're shipping them 70, 100. I know this is not directly related, but again, it shows this autocratic, dictatorial, governmental oversight of things, saying we don't have the hospital beds, we got to move you. And whether you want it or not, your autonomy doesn't mean a hill of beans to us. You got to go 70, 150 miles away from your home in the north. That means you're out into some sort of facility, you're away from family, away from your support because you're long-term disability. So you're not able to look or care for the person at home. My mother had long-term disability, dementia. We tried the best to give her autonomy, and eventually we couldn't. It was a 24/7 operation for her, and so she went into a long-term facility home. But she went into a assisted living institution first. Then we got her into an apartment a block away. Then we got her into an apartment directly below us, and then she went into the nursing home because we couldn't take her. And the government was doing everything it could to keep her out of that institution. So they had her going along for 13 out of 14 points. They had a system of points you had to hit and score upon for your, have you been to the hospital? Yeah, we took her to the hospital. Was she admitted? Well, no, the waiting was 4 hours long. We didn't get her in, so we took her home after her fall. Check. Well, that doesn't count. So the government used that not to put her in. So she had all but finished. A social worker, the nurse aide, or whatever this representative of the government was, she was about to put her book away. And I said, she goes, well, your mom seems fine. And my mom was a crafty, smart lady, even in her dementia. She knew what was going on. And so she had been really well prepared for this. But at the end, I got my mom on a psychological weakness. I said, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, ask my mom how my dad's doing. Now, my dad had been dead for 10 years or so. And she goes, oh, he's fine. And when it started talking about the father, and then right away, just with that caused her to open up her book again and go through, and we got my mom admitted. But if I hadn't interceded at that point and put the question to her, how's dad doing? And then my mom coming up with some, in her mind, dementia, that he's alive and well and doing great. And he wasn't, of course. He was deceased. So there is.
I'm very glad that the craftiness didn't translate to you, because you can't craft a fucking sentence without going ahead and taking up 2 to 3 minutes. But I will translate the Japanese for the audience.
Hey, hold on. No, don't hold on.
You literally got to say the entire argument.
Reservoir, can I hop in here, because I think I could satisfy both sides on this. If you just give me a moment, I think I can satisfy everybody on this.
Why the ad?
All I had to do to have you was sign up for tier 2 of your Patreon. 'Cause you're my Patreon girl, and your love for me depends on how much money that I pledge to you monthly.
Okay, I didn't think hold up just a second. I didn't think I would have to do that early. Normally this doesn't start until we start hitting the hot seats, but let's everybody take a deep breath. All right. Reservoir, the floor is to you. But if you do throw insults, they are going to be allowed to respond to those insults.
Could I actually steal your time, Reservoir? Because I'm not making an argument towards you for a moment.
Yeah, we're pivoting. It's fine. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay. Rachel, I'm sorry to say, but you're making an appeal to emotion fallacy during this entire time for your arguments, and it's based off a lot of anecdotal experience, and it's not going to move this conversation ahead when we're contesting with the actual argument that's being presented on the other side, which is life, liberty, and freedoms. So I'd actually like to contest directly to the life, liberty, and freedoms. So I'm just going to start out with this statement that I believe that my position actually provides more rights, liberties, and freedoms in the fact that I am concerned about the consent up until brain death, while you guys are only concerned about death up until consent on writing that piece of paper and allowing that person to take the medication.
I'm not just concerned with that. I do think that the sole arbiter of violence in our societies is the government. That is my fundamental understanding of how the government works. We say, hey, we got bad things going on. We need somebody to go ahead and take care of it. And then we can actually go ahead and live peaceably, right? I do think that our governments do overstep all the time, right? I think that this is already happening. We've seen it in Canada with the kids, the reservations that they ignored, covered up, did all that. So we don't really care that much about that. People still don't, because it's still kind of just brushed under the rug. Just the same as for me in America, the way that we deal with police here. I think this idea that we give a care about life often does come from where Rachel is, anecdotally, emotionally. And, I do absolutely feel that in this case, you have a mother who obviously, has some faculty to continue living. If I'm understanding correctly, she didn't have a terminal illness, but rather a decreased condition that it was suggested, and then you intervened. Am I misstating that?
No, I think you're correct. I would also like to present upon, even though I brought up the example of things like attempted unalivings, and that 80% and 20% is the average on people who reoffend and not. Let's say that we do have the scenario where we have medical professionals that are evaluating the person to see if they are actually a qualified person to undergo this treatment of MAID. It's like, let's say that we were able to reduce the percentages to 90-10, like 90% actually is more than likely going to be okay with this procedure, but 10% is left over and more than likely is going to end up suffering towards that very pivotal moment in their consciousness of death. Personally, I don't see it as a benefit to allow that mistake of 10% to even go through and experience that amount of suffering. So on the safe side, I would rule that absolutely no, we cannot allow MAID.
I think that when you're saying these 80-20%, sorry, I'll let you get in there after this primal. Sorry.
I am going to interrupt the panel for this one. Stepping back, Jack comes in with a $50 saying, don't know how, but somehow this is a Fatty and Black Dawn fault. Great show. I'm cloud watching your entire catalog. So far, I'm entertained and willing to support. I'll be around. Nice to meet you, Sarah, and nice to meet you as well. Stepping back. Thank you so much for the super dono. I'm going to leave that up for a while and back to you guys. I apologize.
Yeah, you're fine. I think that I'll bring it back here. You're citing the statistic of unaliving as this 80-20. I think that in a lot of situations, when we look at what causes or brings those causes to come forth, we're not talking about inconquerable things. We're talking about people making a temporary decision for a permanent, a permanent decision for a temporary problem. Sorry, I got that backwards. Got that Willy Wonka error today. But I do think that when we look at that, we can say, and I did caveat this within my beginning, because I do think that we actually do need to focus more on mental health services. So that way people who are going ahead and going through these sorts of things, even going on disability itself, I saw a statistic that there is like a something around like a 15% increase from the moment that somebody would become disabled as determined by the government, in Canada, for instance, that they would go ahead and start to try to attempt such things and actually be open and receptive to that. I would say that, no, we need to focus more on the mental health care for people at their most critical and pivotal positions. Is only after we go ahead and get past these bars, which is what the attempt of the legislation is. I just don't think it does go far enough. I think that we should have further panels, at least compared to Canada's system. And I would honestly prefer more of the Norwegian, system generally, if I would go through my research of this, where the doctor is simply not allowed to even enter the idea. It has to be something requested by the person involved.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I feel like that I actually granted you a little bit leeway on that position of the 80-20% upon unaliving. And I gave you the example of like 10 to 90. Like, let's say that 90 is the successful situation, 10 not. I'll even grant 199%. 1% comes out. I still don't think that is worth the risk in order to allow somebody to go through that suffering. And I also completely agree with you that we do need to invest in more mental health services, disability, and also just reforming society in general where we're more helpful to each other, but it still doesn't come down to the subject, and the contention that we have is, should MAID be allowed? And I don't really hear much of an argument as to the reasons why MAID should be allowed from your side that also is able to contend against my statement of, we cannot observe consent when the person is unconscious, and being able to contest against that, So that's really what I'm going to.
Do you know that 3% of people that get ACL surgeries regret getting the surgery? Should we stop doing those too?
Well, this is the contention about MAID. I'm not sure on the details of what you present.
They have a regret. They've obviously gone against their autonomy, which is what you're trying to establish. But that's at a high
have they died?
1 to 99.
Have they died out of this procedure?
They've now entered themselves into a lifelong of suffering that they didn't wish to endure.
But is it death? Is it the suffering of death?
This is the same argument.
No, it's not, because we're talking about the ultimate punishment that exists, which is death. Why do you think we have capital punishment? Because capital punishment is the ultimate punishment that we can serve to somebody. So we're not talking about a certain elective surgery that somebody goes into or death. We're talking about somebody who is ending their life.
I mean, if you're changing the quality of your life to become that of suffering, that can kind of end the way you live. Somebody who's
but I've already presented with the statistics upon suicide that the majority of people actually regret the idea that they went to attempt and fallen back. No, it's very comparable. It's the comparison. Look, if you let me respond. The comparison is that people who felt the suffering in order to have them commit something to unalive themselves and did not, and turned away from the idea of unaliving, they haven't fixed the suffering, but they realize that death is not the answer.
I mean, you can stand like Khrushchev and bash your foot against the table over and over again, but it's not going to really change the fact that you've basically said that, in my eyes, we shouldn't be doing ACL surgeries now with your statements.
And Primal, you've been a little on the quieter side. If you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, you're good. I just kind of wanted to push back on the, let's say 10% or 1% or whatever the amount was. What if that patient was duly informed of consent of these possible outcomes? Just with any medical procedure that has any gravity to it, we have to give a patient the procedure itself, what it is, what the risk and benefits are, and what the potential alternatives are, and any negative side effects that they might experience of that. If you outlined that all for them and said, hey, once you go past a certain point, there is no going back, and they were in full understanding of this is what it is, and there is, let's say, a 5% chance or a 10% chance that this may be your experience, would you still have that stance?
Yes, I would.
They made that decision, like, yes, I'm informed of all this.
I would still be against it, and the reason being is because we know that the brain activity can last for up to 30 seconds after cardiac arrest, and during that time, a person could change their decision, and if they change their decision during that time, they are now experiencing the ultimate suffering, and that is the contention that we really have, is that we're trying to end suffering, and if you end up putting this guy through a procedure with the promise that he's going to end his suffering, but instead, actually, the outcome is the worst suffering he could ever experience because of death, I don't see the treatment actually curing anything.
Any provider promising any set outcome is foolish. There is no promise of any set outcome. There is promise of here are what could happen and here's likely to happen. But promising a set outcome is not the way.
Yeah, but we're talking about literal death. you know, and we have a lot of treatments out there. Well, let me take a step back. So part of the reason why people are suffering and they would elect to something like MAID is because they fear of the future. They fear that they're not going to be able to solve all these problems that they have in front of them, whether it be the burden that they have on their family, being able to provide for themselves on actually getting a stable job. But we can never predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. And they very well could just wait a little bit longer and end up making their situation a lot better because of even like a strike of luck. But I would consider that as a spiritual faith, that faith came along.
So, and I just so that I can understand your position more fully, I understood Rachel's as a little bit of a leeway for like a terminal diagnosis. Is that correct? And then Tiki Tack, are you in an absolutist type position of, despite whatever terminal diagnosis or whatever, there should be none of it?
Ultimately, I'm in an absolutist position because it is based off of my religion.
That's okay. I just wanted to fully understand the position because I agree with a lot of the things you say. I am in the allowance of terminal diagnosis that's been vetted properly and that kind of side can't, because I don't think it should be willy-nilly, obviously. But I think for some people, I think that suffering is a hard to quantify category. What one person may define as the ultimate suffering, another person may have a very different perception. It's like pain. What somebody tells you is pain to them is pain to them. And we have a hard time grading it per se. So to one person, death may be the ultimate suffering, but to another person, it might not be. That could be a moralistic view on your perspective on it.
But we have to stick within somewhat of like generalities, and I would have to present to you, it's so why do we always cater to capital punishment for the worst crimes?
I actually don't think that. I think that for some people, capital punishment would be less of a punishment to them than spending 50 years in solitary confinement.
Yet generally speaking, we find that to be the most reasonable outcome for the worst crimes.
Yeah, I think that depending on who is polled in that, some people would say, I would rather be ended than suffer for 50 years in solitary. Like that would be something that would be out there. I don't have stats on that.
Yeah,
but
on the individualistic side, but when you talk about a populum basis of generalities, generally speaking, people see capital punishment as the ultimate punishment for the most egregious crimes. So we do actually reference death as a pretty egregious punishment.
And I saw Rachel kind of nodding.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rachel, to you, I think you had something to add in there.
I just simply wanted to ask the question. So I heard from Rez that the idea was, it's for autonomy. We make that decision. There is no concern that once you open that door and that we become somewhat used to the idea of assisted suicide. Oh, grandma's going next Thursday is her day. That as a society, we become desensitized to it. And now we're in a desensitized state. Is it possible that the government could ultimately take that autonomy, that choice from you?
No, because that would be murder. And we already have laws against that.
In Canada,
go ahead and forcibly take someone's life against their consent. That's murder. We have laws against murder.
No,
we actually do try government officials that murder people as well as doctors that murder people.
Yeah.
So I think we've already got that covered. Yeah.
No, I don't think we have it covered. And here's why. Because it'll no longer be defined as murder. The government will define it.
Why wouldn't it be defined as murder? I thought we were just talking about defining euthanasia and what we should do with that. Why are we changing murder statutes?
Well, no, because your argument is, to speak to your point, you're saying that that would be murder if the government chose to put people to death without their choice in that decision making. What I'm suggesting is that they will find a legitimating cause for the death, and it will be tagged with and paired with some sort of higher moral clause, such as the well-being of the planet, overpopulation, financial burden upon the country. We cannot afford it. And therefore, for a future generation, it will be the higher moral cause that you willingly lay down your life, and that kind of mentality, that kind of setting would come into place in our society.
I already go ahead and want to dismiss this because we already routinely cast the poor to death when we don't allow them health care, access to goods and services, including the disabled. We are literally doing this. If we look at Rachel's video, I watched that and I wasn't sure where we were going with this, but I was horrified because these are people who, the one character, I believe it was Lester, was the one who said that he literally lost money when he turned 65, to go ahead and support even a meager, basic lifestyle. I think that is heinous. I think that that's repulsive. I think that that's disgusting. I think that's bad. I think it's bad when the government gets to choose who gets to live and survive, but they already do it. The thing is, I think if we're going to be really honest about this, we already do all of this, but we just do it through a much slower process of poverty and the destruction of the self. And rather, I would just say to some people, hey, you know what? You can do what you need to do when you need to do it.
I agree with you on that point. Absolutely. That the government is already dispassionate in this regard, and that they're
they don't care about the disabled. That was the most terrifying takeaway from Canada. Yeah. I was way more. I respected your guys' country way more before this panel. So
this is a good time to just say I'm going to start the hot seat here in about 2 minutes. We've got Caucasian Sasquatch back there. We have Corinth back there. We have Wiggy. And if anybody else wants to join the hot seat, please feel free to hop backstage. You get 10 minutes on stage to engage in the panel. If you'd like to interrupt the panel at any given moment, we will do that. If you do the Cash App, we will interrupt on the nose, $10 or more. But shout out again to Steppin' Back Jack for the $2. Old people with no pension gonna love this combo. Yes, good point. And John Bandy comes in with the $4.99. More topics like this, Miss Sarah. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you like these topics, please feel free. Michelle's Cash App and also her Buy Me a Coffee is dropped in a link. She's the one that does all of the back work behind here, bringing all of these great topics to you. So help keep Michelle happy with her bird, and we'll keep getting great topics. The floor is back to you, and Caucasian,
Hey.
I'll be bringing you up in 1 minute.
Quick sidebar. Does everybody differentiate between the assisted process and a euthanization process, or do you see it both in the same bucket?
I was about to bring that up. So I generally see it both in the same bucket, but I would actually like to hear you guys' position on both of them as well.
I think I could put them in both of the same bucket. I think I would prefer the assisted because I think the assisted gives this like further level of consent because we're trying to maximize the amount of consent somebody can give. I believe that an assisted, similar to a certain doctor who traveled in a van around Texas named Kevorkian, went ahead and did. I think that is something I would be much more willing to do. I don't appreciate the way he did it because again, I would prefer a panel. I think you should see multiple doctors get second thoughts. You should see a psych eval, etc. But again, I think I prefer the assisted because I like having that final last piece on the individual themselves.
I agree. I think that gives them the ultimate say in the process. And also, it just kind of goes along to you said everybody's done their due diligence. And to be blunt, we kind of already do that to people out in the world when doctors give them 3 months worth of Percocet at one time. Who's to say that they aren't already starting that process for them? So that's kind of the other thing. It's already happening in a roundabout way.
Yeah, I would present one little nuance about the euthanasia. So this is prevalent within the Netherlands, that there is a lot of predatory euthanasia going on within the elderly community, where doctors are being given given to make the consent for the elderly and putting them through the euthanasia process. So I feel like that being able to ban that completely would give an extra level of protections from that happening, where the assisted suicide is the requirement for the patient to initiate the treatment or consume the medication.
When you say about the doctors giving the consent to do it, what do you mean by that? Could you expand on what that is? My brain just stopped for a second.
So usually the doctor ends up diagnosing the elderly with some terminal illness, and it's based off of their evaluation that euthanasia is a better option than long-term treatment.
This is why I actually prefer those models over Canada, because they have a doctor. It is actually illegal for a doctor to suggest that. So they actually have that coded in the bill. That's why I actually prefer that process, because I do prefer the assisted process more. But yeah, I think.
And I saw something about there had to be like a secondary doctor potentially also that was not involved with the care, that didn't have a pre-existing relationship, that also had to agree with it. I think if it's going to be done, it has to be highly regulated, because I do agree with some of these slippery slopes, because I can't remember who said it, but who's to say we don't get to a point where insurance says, hey, it's cheaper just to end this than to spend another $1.5 million providing your care for the next 20 years. Let's just take care of you now. I think there is a concern for that in my mind. That's why it needs to be safeguarded.
Yeah, I think that's what the assisted process kind of safeguards against that, because at that point, what do we say to the insurance company? Get bent, because guess what? You aren't pulling the final trigger.
Right. Did we want to go to Sasquatch?
Sasquatch,
Yeah.
you can intervene anytime you're ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Caucasian Sasquatch. I stand in the self-determination camp almost as an absolutist. There's very few places I would see an exception. I don't think you can put assisted and euthanasia in the same bucket, primarily because euthanasia sort of in the word itself implies government or corporate oversight on some level. And I think this is a very personal question, and I don't want corporations or government involved in my personal living life. Why would I want them involved in my death any more than it's absolutely necessary? I'm split on the pay for these types of services, because I'm not exactly sure at what point self-responsibility takes over for self-dignity. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but I think it's close enough. What do I got the full 10 minutes just to rant, or?
Well, I mean, they can
argue with
I agree with
Yeah.
you, so I don't have much to respond.
Wrap around.
That's kind of where I wanted to go.
responsibility versus dignity thing. If you can elaborate a little more.
Okay,
on that.
so let's say you have a homeless man who's mentally ill running around on the street, and he's homeless not because of anything other than his mental illness.
Mhm.
Housing this individual, even at least in a semi-gated scenario, might be more humane than leaving him out on the street, but it will also be more expensive. This individual can't choose to remove himself on a conscious level, or perhaps he may have already chosen to. This is a very personal decision, and it's very difficult to bring any other party in that's not like a personal friend or relative or someone you trust. You can build that type of rapport with a doctor, but most people don't in the modern era. You get shuffled off to specialists. You've got to go to the uronologist. You've got to go to the bone specialist. You got to go to your mental specialist. You got to go, and no doctors are willing to take a direct responsibility for a single patient's care. It's always spread over a net of service. And that's not allowing the patient to have accountability back to the services that they're paying into throughout their life through either taxes or paying insurance or whatever, right? So self-dignity falls in the camp of, I am self-aware, I have the ability to make my own decisions, perhaps a terminal diagnosis or perhaps a critical chronic illness or something along those lines leads to the idea of euthanasia being an acceptable path to the individual. I am not specifically against that. On the other hand, my daughter was recently diagnosed with MS. That's a chronic condition. There's no real treatment for it. And if you asked me if I would let her do that, no, there's no way.
Well, we have palliative care for MS, though, right?
Right. So
we can, though we don't have a cure, we have a way to succeed that. We'd be looking at, I think you would be looking at the same thing as somebody being told, oh, you have high blood pressure, let's just get you out of here, right? When it's like, no,
right.
Pills, you can get that palliative care. We are learning more about MS, right? But we have ways that somebody can live without that suffering. It's not like a permanent, absolute 100% condition. There are
and it's not always detrimental early on, or it's not, people can live a full life and have no real problems for it other than an occasional shake. That happens. In modern medicine, though, rather than her going to a general practitioner who suggests a single specialist and she deals with that one specialist, she's going to see different specialists every other week or so. They transfer her to a different clinic, a different doctor, a different place, a different location, go get different tests. she's losing the patience to fight all of this stuff. I can see it in her eyes. So how do you deal with it when, like Rachel was saying, it becomes a very emotional thing? It's not my choice, but at the same time, I'm sure she'll ask my advice. So it's hard to answer these governmental and corporate questions from the perspective of the individual without actual individual stake in the concept. I mean, tyranny happens from the government and corporations. Pretty much any organization that holds power over your day-to-day life can expose you to tyranny. That can be an HOA, that can be your insurance group, that can be your doctors. So how do you protect the most vulnerable, those being the mentally ill, the elderly, the ones who have fallen below the poverty line and have no apparent way of ever getting back above it? How do you maintain their self-determination through a system that seems to be designed to take them out like freaking ducks in a shooting gallery? I yield the floor.
Yeah, what if you could snap your fingers, what would you do to give them more control in their life? Because I think it ultimately comes down to quality of life for most people is, hey, am I able to do the things that I want to do with my life? If I can't, then some people will take that to the point as I don't really care to live anymore if I can't do whatever it is I want to do per se. Like, what would you say, Caucasian Sasquatch? Like, if you could snap your fingers to, like, other than curing the disease, what else could be done to improve quality of life?
Well, quality of life comes down to the individual themselves.
Agreed. That's a subjective term. Yeah.
If you go ask a goth chick in a New York apartment what her quality of life is, you're going to get a very dark response. And that's not because she has a bad quality of life. It's because she's going for the image. On the other hand, if you go ask a man in a palliative care case who's laying in bed with 2 gone legs and a bad arm, he's going to give you a very similar view on life, but it's because he actually has a lower quality of life standard. You have to take these on individual bases. And so I think the individual themselves need to be strongly considered before the state, before corporations, before insurance, before cost, before analysis, all of that. All of that stuff should be in addition to.
Yeah, and I think that one way that we can actually fight against that, I think the easiest thing is to actually perform proper psych evals from many people who have, like ways to look into this, right? Not just have one psychiatrist go into talk to somebody. Like, I know I've been through therapy. It took me a while to find a guy that I liked a lot, and then, started talking to him. Now I have a relationship with my father. It's amazing. I recommend it for everybody, right? But the thing is, you do have to like search around and find what works. Medicine is a practice. It's not a certainty, right? We can never be certain. And honestly, I know that the shuffle can be improper, but reminding, like, I think whenever it comes down to it, like, I have family members that have gone through things. They're just like, I'm just so tired. I just can't do this anymore. And I'm just like, no, it's a practice. This is a process. And we are trying to get there. If we can't get there, and then we have to consider, can somebody survive with it? Then you go to the mental health people. Then after that, then if they are going to put it out there to say that, hey, this is a thing, sure. But I think, again, it comes down to, again, I don't want to conflate this with, unaliving, because, again, I think these are fundamentally different things. I think enough, you can go ahead, have a person go through some mental health evals over a 6-month period. And at that point, it'll be very difficult for somebody to fool it that much. And if they are fooling it that much, they just become this almost, don't want to get help to begin with, which, is.
That's exactly why I brought up the goth chick. Yeah. I brought up the goth chick versus
as somebody who has been with plenty of goth chicks, let me assure you, they love living. They just love leather and other things.
Yeah, they just love to complain about it. That's the thing. I mean,
that's everybody, though. We have everybody bitches about everything. That's the whole point. We bitch about things because we want to make the world better. That's our point as humans. That's the point of our spiral genetics. We're always
goths do it in a certain way.
But that's the thing, though. We all complain about stuff, and we complain about stuff because we recognize a problem that we want to go ahead and actually fix. That's what we're doing here. We're complaining about each other's arguments and whatnot because we do have a problem that we want to fix. You came here because you're complaining and you want to fix a problem, right? Again, it's understanding the language. I'm not going to go ahead and judge somebody who's speaking Spanish, from my, deaf ears to that language, right? I'd find somebody that can speak that. I'd go ahead and find somebody that can actually work with somebody family. You know, it's called actually diagnosing, you know, like the individual, you know, understanding that individual, their liberty, their autonomy, their free will, and going ahead and working from it. I think that seems somewhat similar to some things you echoed at the beginning of this.
Right. I'm a big self-deterministic person. Like,
yeah,
I believe you're responsible for yourself. And I think if you're going to be that way in life, you should also be that way in the process of your death.
I think that, again, goes back to my point about government control. We just went through lockdowns through the COVID structure. We had people's bank accounts suspended by the government because they weren't getting in line with a medical procedure. This is really interesting stuff. So the same people that are doing that are also the same people that are coming up with Made in Canada, which is problematic to me. I don't have a lot of faith in our institutions. I think they're corrupted, and for the very reasons that you point out, Caucasian, in so much that we have a big pharma, these conglomerates, these corporations, and what are they doing? They're influencing on the government. So they'll say, we'll give you money, but you're going to vote the way we want you to, politician. And so all this kind of co-opting of the corporations and the medical system. This whole issue, euthanasia, medically assisted unliving, it's not an island by itself. It's connected to the systemic failure of our society, and I think we've lost a lot of the traditional family caring for loved ones, this sort of thing. The state has encroached and taken over in many areas. From child rearing, daycare is becoming an absolutely mandatory thing because we need to have 2 income earning families for people.
Say goodbye, Sasquatch.
Goodbye, Sasquatch.
You can stay back in line too if you want.
So I have a couple of questions for Reservoir.
Sure.
Do you believe that the doctor should be able to suggest the option of unaliving?
My theory, like I said before, when I looked at like some of the European models, that was something that got brought up to me, and I was like, you know, I think when it comes to like mental health, the mere suggestion of something like a psychosomatic illness, a placebo, if you will, can go ahead and have somebody actually go ahead and display certain illnesses, such as like we've seen with TikTok. Some of the people that develop tics are actually developing low versions of South Park did an episode on this. I completely am blanking on it. They just say curse words a lot and they do it randomly. I can't remember what it was. It's Tourette's, yes. So I think that just that suggestion can actually be something. I think it's something that's in the back of a lot of people's minds where it's like, you know, once that becomes legal, we would probably have a public knowing that it's legal. Again, through some sort of whatever, at that point becomes part of the zeitgeist. And, you know, that becomes something that you're going to talk about with your family. So like in Rachel's situation, her mother would still, you know, be the one that puts it forth first rather than having it foisted upon themselves. And that would only probably come from talking within your family or from some deep and determined goal within yourself. So I do prefer that. Though I'm not sure if I'm like, I think that I could not support us. I'm not sure I wouldn't support a system that doesn't have that necessarily. I'm not certain on that.
Okay.
I'd have to see
Good
the
response.
quality of suffering, right? Like if somebody, you know, had a disease that turned their blood into battery acid, right? I'd be like, yeah, man, go for it. Like you're not gonna be able to talk. Your blood's battery acid, right? You're like, somehow you're alive. You wouldn't be able to talk. You wouldn't be able to explain it, but you know, it'd be like that. Same thing with, Harlequin kids that have no ability to survive, but they'll kind of just fester for a little bit. I think that that's just tragic and horrible, and we know that it's just painful. It's like a near no survival rate. Like, I mean, we're talking lower than 0.1%. And yeah, that sort of stuff. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, okay, that's okay. Yeah, I can see that there are possibly instances where we wouldn't have this, but generally speaking, I would prefer the doctors not to be able to mention it.
Okay, Corinth, you are up. When you're ready, go ahead.
First of all, let's start with Tiki because of how he answered the reason it's bad. What do you think about DNRs?
What's a DNR?
Do not resuscitate. You sign one of those, and then if you get into cardiac arrest or something, they don't do anything to try and bring you back, second your heart stops.
Yeah, generally I'm fine with that.
Don't you feel like that has the same issue of if they take back their consent in that moment, post-cardiac arrest, post-cardiac death, will they still have brain activity? They're still having that massive suffering.
You are absolutely correct on that. It's there is that potential for the massive suffering. And personally, at a personal level, I would not go for the DNRs. But yeah, I completely understand the conflict and ideas on that.
So how do you say to reconcile this, or do you fundamentally have to change your way of coming to, or why you're arguing at least for why not to have euthanasia?
I would say that the person that's on the table has a much serious risk, a much higher risk of death versus the person who is opting into death.
We can take this step back. What if they have terminal diseases and they just opt out of treatment to get themselves to die?
Well,
do you think we should force them to get treatment?
Well, the terminal illness in itself does not associate to a person deciding whether they want to unalive themselves or not. Usually the reason is because they're trying to end suffering. And if you're not contending with the actual suffering in itself, then it's... if you're not contending with the suffering, then you're not really solving the solution that they're intended to come out with on the assisted suicide.
They would... Sorry. Were you going still?
What's that?
Were you still talking? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
They would be content with suffering here. They see their life, if they continue to get treatment to barely survive, as just furthering that suffering to the point where they'd rather the larger amount of suffering in the short term to not have a greater amount over a long period of time. Do you think that we should force them to get treatment if this is their reasoning?
Is this for the people who are opting into opting into the assisted suicide, or the ones who are signing the DNC orders?
Opting into the assisted suicide.
So that's where I come into, again, the contention that we don't know if they consent all the way up until brain death. So if they can't consent up to brain death, then they very well could be suffering the ultimate punishment to the cure of suffering that they were hoping for.
This would be the case with a terminal patient who opts out of treatment to die faster because they feel like that'll give them less suffering. You don't know if they're consenting to not getting treatment up until brain death. You just know they're doing it up until cardiac death.
Yeah, but cardiac death doesn't necessarily mean that they're not conscious during that time. The brainwave patterns do continue for 30 seconds, but to get to the actual original point that you're working off of, the issue comes into whether it really just comes down to this option of suffering, and when it comes down to it, it's like we can't ever know if they are in a situation of absolute suffering because of the decision made or not. So when it comes to an elective service into going into assisted self-termination, I vouch against it because of the potential of suffering.
I'm not sure if this is how you delineate this from someone who'd opt out of treatment to get to this point faster, though.
Well,
you say that we should force them to have treatment in that case as well?
If we're talking about a terminal illness, do we ever have a definitive time of when we know a person is going to die?
No. We have a general broad idea, though.
Yeah, so it's a broad idea. We don't actually have a guarantee of when it's actually going to happen. Somebody could, end up passing away either a few days when the critical illness is only set to a month, or they could survive for many years afterwards. We see this a lot with cancer patients. So why would we restrict the opportunity for somebody to go through the experience of being able to live a long life if their luck happens to be good?
Because a long life doesn't necessitate a good life. You can have someone being tortured in your basement, and them having a longer life would be a bad thing in this case.
But then we're looping back into the suffering bit, where it's the idea of terminating somebody's life or assisted dying is that they're trying to avoid suffering, but there is that potential where they could actually suffer absolute suffering. And that's my reasoning for stepping back on being able to allow that process.
What do you mean by absolute suffering, and how much greater than any other form of suffering do you see it?
So as I brought up in the example of capital punishment, is that we generally agree that death is the ultimate punishment. So when somebody is in the state of going through this terminal illness or going through the self-assisted suicide, they very well could face a moment in their consciousness where they no longer want this, but now they're going to suffer the ultimate punishment. It's essentially capital punishment for their mistake.
Okay. So how much worse than any other form of suffering, say living with cancer to the point where you can't do anything and you're in constant pain? How much worse is this?
How does that compare to death? Well, I like to live by a motto that pain reminds you that you are alive.
Okay, this is still not really getting over to the answer to the question.
Oh, it very well does. It's the pain is the reminder that you are alive, that life is a very valuable thing, and upon death, that is the worst outcome that can ever happen.
You're conflating pain with suffering in these two cases. So again, how much worse is this suffering than the other case of suffering? Because you're saying that
All
this
right.
is what
So the other example
for multiple years potentially, to not have the risk of having this larger suffering in the moment. Now, this suffering needs to
you
be
can't
so
predict
much
that,
greater.
but you can't predict that.
This is the entailment of your view, though. You're saying
No,
because
no,
they can
no.
live
Yeah, no.
longer.
This is your view right now upon the suffering of how. We know that they're going to suffer so X long, even though I proved to you that we actually don't have a determinate outcome of how long they're going to be suffering. So, how do you contend with that?
I'm directly. The longer they live while suffering, like a torture.
But you don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know that they'll be suffering that long.
Right, they can only be suffering for a week, and they'll die.
Well, you don't even know if a secondary treatment comes in through research and actually can stop the suffering from happening. You cannot predict the future outcomes of somebody suffering.
You're right. We don't absolutely know if that
Exactly.
torture patient,
Exactly.
if the person being tortured is going to be saved by Superman in like 5 months. So we should keep them locked in the basement and keep torturing them in this case.
No, it's we're not offering assisted suicide to people who are suffering being tortured in a basement, and I would suggest that the police force get involved in this and save the person.
This is the idea of using suffering as the metric to prolong a life because the potential for greater suffering.
Yeah, and this is my contention against the idea of suffering as a means in order to justify assisted suicide. I am against it.
You're against. Are you against suffering, or are you against the argument of using suffering as a reason to justify it?
Both.
Okay, so you need to be able to quantify then how much worse this potential for suffering is, so we can see, well, they have a very small chance of this, or they have a very large chance of this, and then we'll see, is that worse than the amount of suffering they'd have in the rest of their life?
But again, we cannot quantify that because we cannot predict the future.
If you can't quantify it, I have no idea how you're even beginning to say one is worse than the other.
And I don't know how you're able to make an argument if you can't quantify it either.
Because we have the expected outcomes that we do.
Okay, so I'll bring back to the idea of capital punishment. In generalizations, we find capital punishment as to be the ultimate punishment. So why would we want to put that onto people who are suffering?
Because they're not doing it for punishment. We see that as punishment because we're preventing them from doing
the potential for punishment. I'll reword it: potential for punishment.
So the potential for punishment. I'm still not even sure if it's the potential for punishment. We say it's not punishment because of moral deserts. We're saying it's punishment for them because they are losing the opportunity to have good experiences in life. They're losing all the good things in life.
They're guaranteed losing the experience if they decide to die.
Yeah, with the terminal patient, they're already having more bad experiences than...
Okay, on a terminal patient, can we predict the time that they will end up ending their life based off their terminal illness?
On a rough idea, usually the longer they live...
We don't have an exact idea.
And the longer they live, usually the more term they have. So by saying they can live longer, it's actually worse for your point because they have more suffering in that case.
I don't think so, because you can't predict the suffering either. You can't predict the outcomes of the suffering.
We can predict a lot more than we can predict yours because we know how people feel when they have cancer. We have no fucking clue how people feel when they're post cardiac death before brain
Yeah,
death.
and a lot of examples of cancer, there are a lot of people who actually end up finding faith and being able to overcome a lot of that suffering.
And overcoming a lot of that suffering.
Yes.
In what sense do you mean they're overcoming the suffering?
They're overcoming the feeling of suffering. Suffering is a
30 more
subjective
seconds.
term. How do you want me to phrase what suffering is if it's all subjective?
How likely is this to be the case? Can you make a prediction on how many
Well,
people are going to be able
Corinth,
to...
How likely it is that how likely is it going to be if you actually to predict when a person is going to die or when a person is going to have future suffering? We're in the same boat here. There's no predictions on what we could do.
We have
And
much
Corinth, your timer has come to an end, my friend. You're welcome to jump back in line and continue the conversation, but there are 4 more people waiting after you. So say goodbye to everybody, Corinth.
Bye, Tiki. We'll talk
Bye,
later.
Corinth.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed your arguments.
That was good. That was really nice. And to the panel, I mean, feel free to still continue back and forth. And the part of the hot seat is to intervene and kind of engage you. But yes, you are welcome to go in any direction you wish.
Oh, Corinth and I are good friends. It's all good.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
As Bandit's coming on, I know we leaned into this a little bit, it seemed like, but I'm kind of curious to explore this a little bit further.
Mhm.
Forcing people to stay alive as opposed to letting them die, per se. Like, do you put that in a similar bucket? Say there's an incapacitated person, and without continuous tube feedings, they would just die eventually. Do you put that, because we're not it's like the trolley problem, right? Do you do something and make them continue to live, or do you not do anything and allow them to die? And then is that in the same category as well as assisted suicide? Because, well, you could have stopped their death rather easily, but you didn't do anything and you allowed them to die. Do you feel that's in the same general sphere?
Well,
I think.
I mean, I was going to talk on that if you wanted to.
Oh, look at that!
Yeah.
It didn't even plan it, Bandit. Yeah.
There's a couple. Can I get to talk now, Sarah?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just looking at the timer.
Yeah, no, I start it once you start talking.
Okay, so a couple things first. How do we circumvent the Hippocratic Oath? Do no harm. Because I know a couple of paramedics, and they could hate the person. They could be a piece of shit, a drug dealer, whatever. They still got Narcan. They still have to give them Narcan. They still have to do whatever it takes to save the person. So we have to conquer that thing first. After that, if you're having the insurance question, I would say we need to modify our laws for power of attorney. So you need to pre-set up all this stuff before you're even sick. You need to go to the psych treatments. Need to get evaluated. Need to talk to attorneys and all that stuff to get that paperwork in. Just to say, okay, I'm a legal state of mind. This is my wishes. Get it stamped on your license. Maybe we have a little, for donors, we have a, do not resuscitate, and we also have the ability to, end your life. And then I got to have the conditions to end that life. So under these X parameters, okay, please kill me. If not, then you can't, because you're putting a lot of legal risk on the doctors, because you're opening your doctors up to a lot of insurance risk. They accidentally kill the wrong person, whatever. It's not going to end well, and doctors will not put up with this crap. They want it clear as day, black and white. There is no gray. You need to look up every single scenario and think about, do I want to survive or die based on the scenario? Because doctors will not do anything unless they have those scenarios in. The other thing is the history of eugenics, all this stuff, is a very dark section of U.S. history from like 1860 to 1890. Very dark. Like, you're talking the Kellogg's, you're talking mental institutions, you're talking about getting rid of quote unquote undesirables that got you into, Nazism and all this other crap. So we're in a dark area to begin with when we go down these roads, because what's the saying goes, you get damned for doing one good thing. Like, the thing is, once you open this up, you open the You can't put the rabbit back in the box. It's going to be bad if you do this wrong. And the problem is, giving government the ability to do this becomes a whole cost issue. You really become a number on an Excel sheet. I used to work for United Healthcare, so I understand all this stuff with death tables and everything. Now you're going to say, what's a life worth financially? Because know what the government's going to do when this happens? I'm telling you right now, they're going to open life insurance policies on every single U.S. citizen, and they're going to be making a lot of money for every person that dies. I'm telling you right
Rez,
now.
I think I see it on your face. You want to go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm here to translate Japanese for everybody here. Okay, I'm a world traveler. You know, I've been doing a lot.
Just because they have the timer doesn't mean they get all the time.
I like to let people.
I'm sorry.
If they want to. I like to let them speak their language, and then I like to go ahead and speak mine. What's the Hippocratic Oath?
I was just getting the part with do no harm. I don't know the
so there isn't. That's not actually a part of a lot of modern Hippocratic oaths. There is no consistent Hippocratic oath that doctors are, obliged to go through. No, they have to go to medical school. They need to practice medicine. That's how they get their licenses to be doctors. The Hippocratic oath has nothing to do with this. The do no harm thing is a fallacious argument. Just like I have another question for you. Do you own dogs?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you know Hitler owned dogs?
Let's be mindful of which words we're using.
I apologize.
Because
the thing is, when we're talking about going down dark roads and stuff like that, once again, all right, I can point terrible people doing wonderful things. I bet you there's a certain Moosey Fash guy that once existed. I bet he had a girlfriend that he loved, kissed her real good, took her to dinner. Now we can't do that. When we engage in these sorts of ideas that these things come from this tainted root without actually examining them, it is thought terminating, and it makes us not actually consider the actual ethics, morals, or anything else within this. Again, when we get to the government part, that is the government committing murder. We don't like murder. I think again, anybody here disagree with me about murder?
No, I agree.
Murder's bad. And we know murder's bad. We saw the government do that. We put new legislation in, so they didn't do that. We're horrified of that now after the traumas of World War II. So at that horror, we now have legislation against it. Yeah, bad things are going to happen. And guess what? We go ahead and slowly make less bad things happen. This is what we do. This is how we work. The idea that we can't consider something just because somebody bad did something is actually insane to me. All right, we wouldn't have organ transplants. We wouldn't have treatments for hypothermia. We wouldn't have treatments for a myriad of things if we just went ahead and threw away all of this terribly gotten science from Unit 573 and a certain workers' party, if you will. By just throwing that away, we lose all value to it. There is value there. We should go ahead and scrape from it.
Wasn't there a Voyager episode on this?
I have no idea. I don't watch TV.
I'm fully against this because, I'm just saying that's my personal beliefs. I'm a Christian, but I'm not trying to throw that out there. I'm just saying if you want to get this done, you're really going to have to get to the legal aspect. You can find a way to get some paperwork in beforehand with power of attorney. You probably can get this done. Otherwise, I don't know how insurance is going to pay for it. And that's the majority of medicine today. Is if you can find a way for medicine to get paid for, you probably can get it passed.
Yeah, but these are non-cohesive arguments, because one of these is talking about the West and its total degeneracy towards its populace that has led to a lot of the degeneration that we have seen of our cultures, where we do have people who are not being taken care of, who are being taken care of worse, especially here in America, ever since Nixon put his HMO policy in back in the 60s, which ultimately made it so that medicine was something we had to necessarily and guaranteeably pay for, which led to rising costs, as many of you may know. I think that once again we can look at this as a separate argument that we don't take care of people. But when it comes to the actual function of what this is, if we abstract, let's say, hey, we are in the perfect society, everybody can get the health care they need, the mental health support that they need, and the actual health when it comes to housing, food access, whatever, then that's where I'm going to work through this, because I know that can't happen. But even to entertain this in the first place, that needs to kind of become normal. All right. So we're already at the point where us entertaining this is sort of a not utopic, but a little bit better to poor people and, other discarded peoples. I think that that's like kind of where I'm at. That's why I don't really care too much about the cost thing here, because again, you know, the cost difference is, yeah, you know, somebody said here, you know, you're gonna have court cases if you screw up. Killing somebody in a court case, that's gonna be way more cost.
Yeah.
Than like a lifetime of, you know, them being paid through with insurance. So an insurance company would obviously go ahead and fight against that, because if they didn't, they would be complicit in murder. And we all dislike
It depends
murder.
if they funnel those insurance policies on top of it, because
I want to.
then you're
I
going to
want to
start
open it
you're gonna
to.
be hedging lives at this point, because that's what insurance is. You're going to find ways of hedging people's lives and take insurance policy. Like your work takes an insurance policy out on you. It's the same thing. You're going to have government take an insurance policy. Sorry.
I want to see if Rachel had anything to chime in on this particular piece.
Well, I just think it's a related issue, but it's not the same issue what as Primal was addressing earlier.
Mhm.
So the idea of intermedical intervention, I'm easier with that. If the person would be dead, if not for medical treatment, yeah, granny's in late stage cancer, stage 4, this sort of thing. Yeah, I wouldn't make it compulsory that you have to sustain that life because it's artificially being sustained.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, that just you care about life, and that's it. Continuance of life is what you've basically said. At that point, there's a continuance. So I don't know how you can hold that position.
Well, continuance. I should add the caveat then for you, Rez, because of my bias, my Christian bias, if God would be the decider again on that, the person would die. If God wanted to sustain that life, then there would be, a miracle, if you will, and so a rebounding towards health. So I don't see the conflict or the contradiction in that.
And medicine keeps, improving every single day. Like, I mean, if you would go back 10 years and say what we have today compared to 10 years ago, it's amazing. So at some point, life's getting better and better. We're being able to treat things that we never thought we could treat back in the day, not even a couple of years ago. Like, so at some point, maybe in the next 100 years, the stuff that we're having where we don't understand the brain like we understand today, I mean, the argument's going to have to keep being brought up again and again, because we're going to keep learning more and more stuff about the body.
So when you say this, though, I think the only reason that we're trying to keep these people alive from that idea of it is so that we can study them, that we can treat them like guinea pigs, deny them the dignity of the autonomy over their lives. And I find that horrendous. I find that disgusting. No one should be a guinea pig. All right, if they don't want to be a guinea pig. Just because it's going to benefit the whole of humanity doesn't invalidate the rights of the individuals. I don't stand by the things that were committed by a certain National Workers' Party, nor, a certain Unit 573. I don't stand by those things. I think that's bad. I don't think that should have ever happened. And, would it have benefited medicine? Sure. But guess what? We need to have some ethics when we do this stuff, because otherwise there's no separation from us and just some rank barbaric something or another. It's disgusting. We use what's good, but these people shouldn't be forced, because again, if they're alive, they're gonna be studied, and that's it. We're basically forcing them to be guinea pigs in my eyes.
I'm just concerned about what kind of ethics. I'll just end with this. I know I got to guess.
Go ahead.
My concern is everybody here on the panel has a different form of ethics, and one person is going to be happy with those ethics, and other people are not going to be happy with this ethics. So how do we determine what ethics we follow? And I'll just end up with that. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Say goodbye, Bandit. Thank you.
So, Reservoir. So I think I could expand on this. So if you're okay with people who are signing a paperwork for assisted unaliving and things like that, would you be okay with them signing paperwork to go through experimental treatment, which could cure them, but could also be extremely painful and the worst outcome ever?
And we get back to autonomy here, and the answer is yes. I think if you want to cut your hand off, all right, and you aren't going to actually go ahead and cause harm to a society and us having to take care of you, you should be able to do that. I think that people should have the choices that they want to make of themselves with respect to mental health, poverty, and other detriments of the material. All right. So when I look at this, it's still an autonomy question. Yeah, 100%. I'm hoping, if I'm going to be honest with you, that someday I do get one of those weird ones. Because I'm going to tell you, go ahead, flay me open. All right, make me as beautiful as the day I was born, covered in blood. Because that's how I want to go out. And guess what? I know what it would turn into. I would go out that way. I would think that that would be at least interesting. It would be different, and that would be fun for me. But I would never put that on anyone else to do that. Ever.
What if you don't know the treatment?
What do you mean?
But if you don't know the treatment, but it could potentially be a very horrific outcome.
Well, they would describe the treatment to you, would they not?
Well, this is the hypothetical. Is that no? Well, this is the hypothetical that they don't give you. Like, let's say that it's just like the opt-in of like an organ donor, but instead it's an assisted suicide where you're volunteering your body for like medical research, and that could be a treatment upon the administer of drugs, and you don't know the outcomes of it.
Yeah, okay.
Would you sign to that?
You wouldn't know the outcomes, and I would assume that like you would be able to put into place, you know, if you did want to go ahead and get to the full end of everything, you would still have that option available to you at any point if it made your quality of life so poor. Because again, we're once again getting to autonomy. Somebody that is in a situation like that where they're getting a treatment, if it isn't working out for them, they can always retract themselves from it if we follow autonomy with this. Autonomy, which allows us to make decisions, allows us, at least in my eyes, through a religious stance, to say, hey, we've made the choice, we played the test, and now you may judge us, which we must allow if we're going religious on this. But generally speaking, I'm going to sit with autonomy, because that same autonomy will continue through where, hey, this didn't work out for you. Oh, it turned your blood into battery acid. All right, guy, we get it. We're moving on. Sorry about that. You know, yeah, that's it. And that's, I mean, that's the thing. If it becomes the point where you have that choice between the two, and somebody's like, yeah, you know, whatever, I'll take the pill. Why not? And then it's terrible. Guess what? The other option's still there.
Okay.
What's up, guys?
I appreciate the response.
Yeah.
Hello, Hornet.
So I just want to comment on a few things because I've heard a few different arguments here. I want to comment on the religious one first. To Rachel, are you against any medical intervention at all?
No.
Then why would it be justifiable to you to say that you're against this process? Because technically they're keeping someone alive. It's God's will to kill them off, right? Like they're sick, right? You shouldn't be intervening in that. That happened.
Well, and what, like, you have to give me an example so then I can answer.
Well, God gave you the cancer, right? Like that's like what his God gave you the cancer. God gave you the whatever it is. God gives. He gives.
Well, I would argue
souls, and he, you know.
Yeah, I would argue theologically that sin gave you your cancer. Sin gave you, not God's sin. Your sin. You're a fallen creation. That's my bias. That's my belief.
But that's still part of like God's plan. Like, so to say that life is cheapened in this instance, but it isn't in that just seems.
I wouldn't presume to say that. Hold on, I would not presume to say that's God's plan.
Yeah. What about kids that get cancer? Are they like? I understand that we have original sin, but like there is. Yeah. I'm sorry, I wouldn't like. It's like the questioning hand of God, where it's just like he just kind of does stuff and stuff. It's just pretty random. Maybe there's some sort of plan. I don't really care. I'm not celestial. I don't need to know that, right? When it comes to that, I'm sorry. I think that this falls flat on its face when we look at kids. There's no amount of like, what are we just? Is God doing thought crimes for again?
I think I have a response for this. I have a response for this. So generally, when it comes to a secular argument of, you know, it's like, oh, if God exists, why do bad things happen? This is essentially the subject that we're getting into.
Well, no.
Let me respond. I'll address everything. So even if you're bringing up a subject of like cancer and a person who's going through suffering, why would God allow this types of suffering or things like that? Well, he's offering the ultimate gift. He's offering the gift of eternal life in heaven.
That's not what I'm saying.
And the thing is,
you're misconstruing what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, why would someone intervene with that? Why do we have medical practices? Like, you break your leg. Why do you have a practice to fix that leg?
Because
right?
we have free will.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That we have free
Yeah.
will, right? We can choose to do stuff. We can
Yeah.
choose to apply into the made method, right? That's still a choice that I'm making consciously.
Well, if we're talking about a theological side, suicide is a sin.
Again, just because that itself, and technically, it's not really suicide because you're just consenting. Someone's killing you off.
No, it's suicide in God's eyes.
No, is it?
Yeah.
Just
Well, if
because
it's a
you
failure.
consented to it.
I mean, is
Yeah.
it the action or is it the
Okay.
It's like God is not just a computer that runs algorithms as being like, if this, then this, if then that. He is a conscious being. He's going to know what's in your heart.
Okay, but that's why I was trying to figure out what is the benefit to medical intervention in like critical areas where it wouldn't be necessary here, right? Where someone health is declining to a point where it's just like they can no longer actually function as like a person in society.
Because the life on earth is also a gift.
But you have free will, so you can make the choice to be like.
But suicide is a sin, and if you're going to make that choice, well, I'm sorry, God's going to have a problem with that.
God could have a problem with it, but I don't understand why this is like the sticking point. But
Because that's the religion. You're contending with the religious argument right now, and you're trying to feed in your own secular viewpoints.
No. I'm trying
Yeah,
to
you are.
actually understand. I'm trying to understand what is the major difference between those two things. Why is there an intervention in one area, but there isn't an intervention in another?
Well, I generally am not an
and the answer
apologist.
I've gotten-
I'm generally not an apologist. I would suggest another channel, Jay Dyer. He does open debates almost every day, and you could actually ask him these questions.
Hey, Tiki, let me jump in real quick here. What's your take on the person that pulled the plug, right? So let's say you are the puller of the plug. If you were the one that ended it, the person was going to, let's say they were brain dead, clinically deceased, blah 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 blah. But you're the person that pulls the plug. Is that wrongdoing? Are they murderers, or are they doing a service?
Well, ultimately, it comes down to God's judgment. And as I explained before, God is a being. You know, he is a rational being, and he will take what is in your heart and what decision you made in the moment and make the correct judgment. The thing is what I feel like that secularists get into is that within the Bible is this very strict rule book of this is sin, this is not a sin, blah, 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 blah. But really, when it comes to Judgment Day, God is going to look at you. He's going to see everything that you've done, and he's going to understand the reasons why you made certain decisions, and he's going to make the right judgment.
But aren't you?
Could you do a bad thing for a good reason?
One at a time.
Sorry. No, I was just saying, could you do a quote unquote bad thing for a good reason? Like, hey, I was showing mercy to this person because I believed them to be suffering, so I ended their suffering for them.
It's very possible. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess like the question I have to ask: do you think that you're committing a sin simply by going ahead and trying to not allow for these things to evolve? Because I kind of like, I think that's where I come from with this.
Evolve is a loaded term. What do you mean by that?
With these people and the decisions that they're making, you're not allowing them to sin. They must, like, if something is to sin, it can sin. That's what it is. I don't like the idea that we're supposed to prevent people from saying. We can virtue signal and we can posture to it, but I really think that that's more like subverting God's plan or God's will, because we are here in religious arguments, if I'm not mistaken, as a test. And that's the thing. If you're not letting people have the choice, you're not even letting them sin.
Well, here's the thing: is that even if were made illegal, you still have the decision to unalive yourself. And the thing is that through every single circumvent, I'm going to try to prevent you from doing that because I see it as a sin. But ultimately, you know, it's like if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. There's only so much that I could actually do.
So you're a proselytizer then?
What does that mean?
It's somebody that goes and speaks in the towns and villages about God.
No, not really, because I think that kind of I feel like it's stupid to do that and doesn't convince anybody.
Okay.
And that's why I came in here with a secular argument.
Yeah, I've appreciated. I actually want to yuck into some religious arguments. I
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go at your argument as well, because you said that it would be essentially the same as capital punishment, but I kind of want you to square that circle for me, because capital punishment means that the person has no choice in that capital punishment, right? They don't have a choice whether they're going to be killed off or not. That's just something the state decides, and that's how like society works.
They don't have a choice to reverse this decision.
They don't have a choice at all in capital punishment. But in the
they don't have a choice to reverse the decision at all.
No, they have multiple points. You can look at the criteria they set up.
All right. Well, the original argument is based off of the original argument is based off after cardiac arrest. The mind is active for 30 seconds, and within that consciousness, you cannot tell whether they've decided to change their decision or not.
Again, there are multiple points that they create between the start of this program to the very end.
You don't understand death until you're right in front of it. You just don't understand death until you're right in front of it.
All the way. Just because
you're not consenting all the way. We're talking about death. We're talking about the moment of consciousness and death.
So unless you can read someone's mind at the very, like, we just get to mind reading levels, this is not acceptable.
No, it's perfectly acceptable when the worst outcome is death, and then we should maybe prevent it because we can't read the mind.
I mean, again, there are multiple procedures.
Why would you continue to allow the procedure to go forward without being able to read the mind, without knowing that the person can change their mind?
Because, again, if you look at the safeguards, there are multiple points that you're looking through.
Where's the safeguard when they're in the ultimate suffering of death upon their unconscious state?
If you jump out of a plane, right? Like if you go skydiving, you have already made the conscious decision to jump out. If your parachute does not open, that is a consequence of that action. Right?
Yeah, but the whole idea of signing up for assisted suicide is to end suffering, and if it ends up actually creating more suffering because you're now faced with the punishment of death, we're not curing the suffering.
Well, it's relative at that point, because you're talking about 30 seconds of suffering versus a lifetime of suffering.
And it's the worst suffering ever because it's death. That's where the relationship comes in with capital punishment, because on a generality of capital punishment, that is the ultimate punishment.
You're not suffering after death.
Rachel Primal.
How do you know that? Have you died?
Wait, do you think you suffer after death?
No, but my point is you're suffering before death. You're suffering knowing that death is coming upon you. You're making the argument that, you don't suffer after death. It's like, how do you know that? Have you died?
I'm saying 30 seconds of suffering in that instance to a lifetime is relative, right?
But you don't know that. You can't prove that.
Yes, you do.
No, you can't. You can't prove that.
So when you die, is your brain functioning at all?
Yes.
Oh, so when you die...
No, sorry, I take that back. You got me there. So no, it's your brain is active after cardiac arrest for 30 seconds up until brain death.
30 seconds, right?
Yes.
And your brain dies, right? So at that point, you are no longer experiencing anything, right? We can both agree to that.
No.
Right?
No, because there are definitely triggers of gamma rays that you're actually going through a course of your past memories. We do know that. And generally, when people come out of near-death experiences, they talk about how they're in a third person. So there is a conscious state that is outside of reviewing those actual memories.
Well, there's a small amount of evidence for that. There's not.
No, there's not. There's a pretty large amount of evidence. There's a lot of testimonies on this.
Yes, there's testimonies, right? It's
yeah.
They have been able to reproduce.
When there is a large sum of anecdotal evidence, it's most likely the case.
Well, not in every case, right? Because again, we're looking at a large scale.
But near-death experiences has been a thing that we've been documenting for thousands of years.
Yeah, and some people say they see nothing, and some people say this, right? It's different from person to person. That's why we can say
and my argument is based off of the mere potential that suffering could happen, even for that 1% of people experiencing it, is the reason why that I do not support MAID.
Well, again, I would say that supporting MAID in this instance isn't necessarily it's again, you're trying to solve for one problem and minimize like the amount of harm that's done for a lifetime versus like a small amount of time, right? relatively.
Not necessarily, because I believe we cannot predict the future of if somebody is going to continue suffering or not, and being able to keep them alive and find a way to mitigate their suffering is the better option than offering them assisted suicide.
Oh, for sure. And you know what does that? The MAID method actually goes through that. They try to analyze, is this the best method to actually figure
No, it doesn't, because it's still offering the solution to unalive, and I don't believe in that.
that it's, again, it's like, okay, we can proceed through the MAID method, and you can stop at any point. A physician could actually stop it at any point.
But my argument is based upon those last few moments up until death. It's not about the process of MAID.
Oh, again, I'm arguing for the whole process, not just the last 30 seconds.
I'm arguing for the last 30 seconds.
So, when I say
contend with my argument.
Yes, with the 30 seconds, I already contended with it. I said the 30 seconds to a lifetime is what we're going to be looking at. Right?
But you still haven't contended with the idea that it's death is very well could be the ultimate punishment and the ultimate suffering for a particular individual who goes through that procedure. You haven't contended with that.
It is the ultimate, like, it's not the ultimate suffering. It's because, again, I can break your
I don't
legs,
know. It
take
seems like in this secular worldview that it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Wait.
death is the ultimate punishment that anybody could suffer with.
No, I can make, again, like I said, like if someone removes your legs, your arms, your eyes, and your ability to hear, what are you experiencing at that point?
I don't know. It's never happened to me.
Nothing, right? Like, again, that could be an ultimate punishment.
How do you know that?
These are going to be subjective. You're using a subjective term to call this the ultimate.
You're using a subjective analogy in order to prove a point. So it's not really proving anything if it's subjective.
That's what I'm saying. It's all subjective. I'm not saying that mine is objective.
But the thing is that even out of all this world of subjectivity, I could still look back at my own religious beliefs and come to an objective realization of morality. You cannot.
Well, again, like I stated earlier, I said that those 30 seconds of death, before death, afterwards you're not experiencing anything, right? Then at the end, there is no more suffering.
Oh, so
Right.
we're just going to go with, oh, yeah, sure. They may end up suffering the most amount of pain and suffering possible, but they're going to die soon. It doesn't matter.
You don't know that it's the most.
You don't know that either. It's like
you're making a point that's saying that it's the most amount of pain. I'm not making that claim. You are the person making that claim.
I'm saying suffering.
Yes, that it's the most suffering that a person can handle.
And then I relay back to, why is capital punishment considered the ultimate punishment?
Well, capital punishment is distinctly different because, again, capital punishment
At the end of it, capital punishment is death. Why is death the ultimate punishment?
No. It's death, but without your choosing. You don't get a choice in that matter in capital punishment. It just happens, right?
But I'm trying to get the analogy of, why is death considered to be the ultimate punishment?
It's not necessarily the ultimate punishment, right? Because we stated even earlier, Primal
Generally
said
it is. Generally it is to the masses.
If we lock someone in for 50 years in a box, like, that's probably a worse punishment than killing them off immediately.
I would say all these people
get kidnapped and locked in a basement for 30 or 40 years and forced to produce children, like that one dude in Romania did. I'm sorry, that sounds a little like, yeah, maybe there's some good at the end of that, right? But like generations of like assault trauma, like your kids getting assaulted and getting, impregnated by their grandfather. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think death is probably preferable than like just like that absolutely just insane reality, especially because most of the time they don't get out and they just wither and die there anyways.
All right, so out of the many times that I've watched like crime films on YouTube, there are many people who have gone and suffered through that for like 20 to 30 years out of their life, but as soon as they come out of it, they are much more appreciative of life that is out there.
Do you think that they show the glossy, glazy stories that make you feel good rather than the ones that make you feel real bad about the people who never get their lives together, become homeless, and just
okay, well,
never able to do anything because
then let me put it into
people are just using them as props?
Then let me put this into another paradigm. Let's say that you experience the most horrible, egregious things throughout life for 20 years, and then on your 21st year, somebody gives you a piece of cheesecake. Is that going to be the most wonderful cheesecake you'll ever have?
Not ever, because I might have a better cheesecake because I might make it myself.
Oh yeah, but even the one that you make yourself is going to be pretty fucking delicious, right?
Yeah, but like, I mean, this is
but this is the thing, is that your state of mind is already so low that you actually become more appreciative of life that is given to you once you're out of that state.
Okay, but when you go ahead and say those things, you're basically telling people to go out there and suffer, so that way things feel better on the other end of that. Like, I feel
isn't the secular argument that we're in a constant mode of suffering and counter suffering?
Yeah, there is actually a secular argument to this. Do you know of the Polish philosopher Dombrowski?
No.
Dombrowski went ahead and actually suggested that the idea of suffering is a way that we can go ahead and actually activate our higher levels. Are you familiar with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
I am horrible when it comes to philosophy.
So what he basically says, Dombrowski says this: we have 5 levels. All right, Brittany Simon did it too. She just stole it from the guy. So the first level is you're a bot. Okay, like, for red pillars, that if you understand, you're just going along with your life. The second level, something bad happened to you, and it kind of conflicts with the way of your programming, like within the society. Then the choice becomes about how you integrate or disintegrate to it. Do you reintegrate into just being like, oh, this terrible thing happened, I'm gonna move back to it, or am I going to ascend? Dombrowski goes ahead and says that people that go through suffering and then ascend do better. However, that also says that you want people to seek out trauma. What you're doing, in my eyes, is not unlike what Dombrowski said, that we should seek out suffering, we should seek out trauma because it makes you better. And I think that's sick.
No, I've never said that you should seek out trauma.
Well, okay, but you're deifying it as if there's it makes somebody inherently better.
Yeah, it makes
no, I'm just presenting a fact. I'm just presenting a fact act of life.
No, you're presenting an idea that yes, things.
Because if there was a person that asked me, should I go through suffering in order to enjoy my life better, I would tell them no. There you go. I'm not promoting that.
I don't really think that your cake argument really works out that great, because guess what? That cake is just going to be as good from somebody that doesn't suffer if it's a good cake.
No, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same.
Putting a deification on suffering as value.
I'm not putting a deification on suffering. Deification suggests that I'm telling people that they should go through suffering, and I've never vouched that.
Like your God does, because he's petty and pedantic.
Okay, so you're just pissed off at God?
No, I'm not pissed off at
you know, if you were to accept Jesus Christ into your life, that he would give you eternal life and pleasure.
Misrepresenting my God, if I'm going to be very, very clear.
You're misrepresenting my God.
Okay, good. Mine's better.
Good. Okay, whatever, man.
Rachel and Prime becomes. Okay, go.
Yeah, I just want to tell Tiki Ta, I'm very much in sync with his overall position here. Very copacetic for me. It's a very standard Christian argument. Some of this stuff, it really comes down to understanding what constitutes a human being. So within Christian dogma and our belief system, we have a tripartite constitution of human being, a spirit, soul, and body, and that we are to operate on the highest level, which is spirit. Not to, and I'm not advocating some sort of asceticism or denial of the flesh or this sort of thing, but I am saying that a lot of our decision making on these things are spiritually derived and spiritually discerned, spiritually apprehended, and spiritually acted upon, and that's where the rest of the body goes, and with your soul. So,
I just want to say thank you, Hornet, for the contention. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, that was fun.
Say goodbye.
Thank you for having me up, Sarah.
All
Thank
right,
you, everyone.
Dr. Robert, you're up. I see you're doing something back there, but you may want to put it away
Come on,
now.
Doc.
Whoa. Yeah, put that thing
Not
away,
that,
Dr. Robert.
not that. I said that. So poorly choiced words.
Word choice.
He's back there playing with
Phrasing,
records.
Sarah, phrasing.
poorly choice words. And let me just give a quick shout out to they were fighting over Hornet, keeping him on, sending him off. Michelle came in with the $4.99. Take off 5 minutes, please. Make it more precise. That was to you, Hornet. You lost 5 minutes, but don't worry. Lauren bought you back another 5. She wanted to keep Hornet on. Pinkerton coming in with a new membership. Welcome, Pinkerton. And ladies and gentlemen, you can hit that tab and become a member to see all of the other shows that we do. We only leave Moderator Monday out. Everything else disappears after a week. Neve couldn't stand to see Hornet go, so she came in with another 5. Don't avoid Hornet for an additional 5 minutes, please. And Emp Dave, same for you, coming in with the $4.99. Need 5 more for Hornet. And Hornet tapped out all of his time. I wasn't going to allow any more donos after that. But yes, Dr. Robert, thanks for joining us. I hope you were enjoying your time playing with your records back there.
I was making great progress, I can tell you that. So.
I could tell.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Great to see Rachel. And sorry that Neve isn't up on here, but glad she's in the audience. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know what I would call my perspective on this topic, but it's something I've had some personal experience with. And, you know, I think my take is it is a very personal decision, and it can be informed by religion, but it depends on the person making the decision. And, you know, they've got to follow their own, you know, their own guidance on that. It's certainly, one thing, you know, there was some discussion that seemed to suggest that the government is going to be intervening in these decisions. I don't see that happening anytime soon. It certainly is not part of the fabric right now. These, and the notion that there is involuntary euthanasia, you know, that's pretty sketchy to me. So there are very few situations where that arises. So if any, and, you know, so if you have a person that has family and is in, or friends, close people that are involved in their decision making, by the time they get to this, they have drafted and signed a statement saying that they trust these people, these individuals, to make decisions in their best interest for their health care. And, you know, it doesn't happen, you know, nobody gets put to death because they have no insurance or they have no family members advocating for them. If someone is there on their deathbed without any of this paperwork and without any funding, they remain, you know, intensely cared for. They are kept alive to the best ability of their physician team. That's the rules, and that's the way it is. And this notion of the Hippocratic Oath, every physician takes the Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath does say, you know, first do no harm, and it includes statements of I will not put financial, you know, it's too long and I don't remember it, but it does say I will not place financial concerns above the care of my patients. I will intend to never harm my patients to the best of my ability. Everybody takes that oath. That's part of it. Now, whether you live up
There's no legal obligation for a doctor to do that.
There's
I
no
heard you
legal-
talked about this before. There's no legal obligation, and it is not necessary. What is necessary is medical school, going ahead, working in a hospital or some other practice, and then getting certified by a board. That's what qualifies you to be a doctor. Nothing about the Hippocratic Oath in that.
That's true. It's not part of the qualifications. And I'm not defending all doctors. I have seen lots of cases where I am aghast at what was done. All right. So, yes. Now, I didn't work in an area where it was life-saving surgery. But, you know, I have seen plenty of decisions and plenty of mistakes, and none of us are perfect. And I regret some of my own decisions and some of my own technical, you know, errors. I'm saying that here, which is big, but it's true for any physician that actually owns up and pays attention to what they're doing. And there are physicians that don't pay enough attention to what they're doing. So
yeah, I think that one of the issues, I actually wrote this down in my notes as like a side thing, because when I was thinking about this, I did think about the Hippocratic Oath stuff.
Is that for me or
one
no?
of the specific things that like I I really thought about is how when we look at, I feel that we have this issue in our culture where we want solutions and we want answers. And the reality is we aren't always going to have those. I think a lot of people get hung up on that. They ruin their whole lives looking for something that they'll never, ever find. And I think that when we come to medicine, we forget that medicine, a lot of times for the common man, is a practice. And understanding that it's a practice means that there is a process, right? Am I going to go ahead and slight the man in 300 BC who's like, if you get eaten by the bloodworms that drink out your blood, you can, I know I'm doing a British thing, assume that they were during the time of Scythia. This person was trying out these things. He took down notes, he worked with it, he pushed it on, another person took that up. We're doing a practice. Failure is a part of that practice. What isn't a part of practice is quitting and giving up, right? We need to persevere. That's why it's practice, because we get better at it over time, and there is never going to be a intimate 100% almost given solution. Maybe someday some super neo Tokyo cyberpunk future, they're going to be able to go ahead and replace your spine, every bone, every organ, every cell, every piece of your skin, and even like your brain cells, and somehow you're still in there. Maybe that happens, but I'm going to live in the reality now where I unfortunately don't have really sick robot augments that allow me to fight wars on my own territory.
Well, yeah, that's not really in the realm I wanted to talk about right now, but it's not badly conceived. I will say I've taught many orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons to do spine surgery. I was a teacher, and I love teaching. And one of the phrases, and it kind of comes out of what you were saying, one of the phrases, maybe my main phrase that I pass along my students is the most important thing to learn from your training is how to think for yourself. It's not about, I must do it this way, I must do it that way, this means this means that. What it means is the most important thing, because everything changes. Our knowledge base and our ability set, our technical, abilities, all of these things change over time. And you've got what you learn in training is not going to be what you end up finishing with at the end of your career. So how do you get there? And the only way you get there is by critically assessing, does this work? Does this not work? This is not on the topic, by the way, but you kind of got me thinking about it.
Yeah, I know.
But it's the reality. The most important thing is to be able to think critically, evaluate your own work, evaluate your own outcomes, and make changes based on what you're seeing. And if you don't have that, you ultimately become a bad doctor. I mean, it's true. So, but to leave that behind, I was going to tell a story.
No stories. No, this is not the night for stories.
Yeah, we've already done a few. Okay.
I don't like the story. I can't help it. So, my next door neighbor had a and we had shared deck. So our deck and their deck were adjoined, and so I would go out on our deck, and her husband and she could come out on their deck, and we would talk. And by the way, I want to ask for, if I needed a little more time, because
it's not how Mod Monday works. It's you get 10 minutes flat unless somebody buys your time.
Oh, you're killing me. All right. Well, let me get to the point then. So this woman comes out, and she was our next door neighbor for 6 years, and she had a progressive neurologic disease, it's a muscle disease, and she was losing strength, and she was a retired attorney, and she had watched her brother, who had the same genetic disease, die from it in a miserable way. And so I'm out on our deck, I don't know, either having a cigar or cooking or something, I don't know. And she comes out and we're talking. And she tells me now, and this is after knowing her 5 years, she's like, I know where this is going. I saw where it went with my brother. I do not want to be, I don't want that as my final endpoint. I don't want to not be able to walk, to not be able to swallow, to have people taking care of me, and She knew she didn't want it. And by the way, she was a force of nature. She was smart as a tack. She was, and for years prior to that, and I'm sorry, fucking, because I know I'm notorious for getting choked up, but it makes me choked up. For years, she went down into Lake Union in a wetsuit, and she would churn the water, working and swimming and preserving and strengthening herself as much as possible. So she tells me, what's the dose of fentanyl I need to end my life? And I told her, I can't tell you that. I don't, and I can't. I couldn't. I don't have that credential. But there needs to be people who have that credential. And she ultimately took it into her own hands, had a guide, and exited the planet. Her. And I think it was a beautiful thing.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Say goodbye to everybody. And we do go
Robert
into
Hart, thank you very much for your story. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I definitely wish the best out of you for all the outcomes.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Rachel.
Yes,
I'm going to get up soon. I got to get up soon on your. I'm sorry. It's just been,
We understand. We totally understand, Doc. We love you.
All right.
Bye, Dr. Robert.
Bye, Sarah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
All right.
Ticky Tack, as we're bringing up the next guest, what if we could solve for that 30 seconds? You kind of kept going back to that 30 seconds of unknown potential, most pain ever. What if we could find a solution for that? Would that change your perspective? What if there's some instant snap of the finger, vaporization of the brain, something like that, where there was no possibility of any sensation for that person? Would that move your perspective at all?
Or maybe that we can read the neurons in a very specific region that suggests that the person wants to survive.
Sure.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
So from a religious belief, I still would not be for MAID, but I could see the secular argument in order to allow it.
Yeah, okay, cool. That was just turning in my brain of like, what if we could solve for that issue?
I can understand. I definitely thought about that before I brought the argument up.
And Adam, can you voice confirm for me, please?
Yep. I am not a troll. I've called in many times to different panels.
Yeah, I know your name. I've seen you before, but I just want to ensure we're not going to get any weird stuff, especially because a lot of people are connected right now. If you take down one, you take down them all, and that would be bad juju. Okay, my apologies. The floor is back to you guys.
Okay, I'm calling in because I want to try to understand what Reservoir's position is. So just to be clear, you think it is acceptable to, lack of a better term, use bodily autonomy to limit bodily autonomy, as in make decisions that lead to a limitation of future decisions?
I'm sorry, you started cutting up like halfway in that and like kind of went in and out. I don't know.
Speak
you might
closer to your mic.
Closer to the
Can
mic.
you hear me now?
Or
That sounded better?
Yeah, it's just you kind of dropped out. I just missed. I just don't actually know what you were going to ask me. I apologize.
Okay, so just basically you support.
I think you have a bad mic.
Okay, one moment. I'll change it.
I'll give you 10 seconds to fix that, and then we'll try with the next guest.
Is that better?
Yeah, significantly so.
Okay.
Were you using your webcam?
Perfect. No.
Okay.
So here's the question. Reservoir, you support people being able to make decisions in favor because you support bodily autonomy. You support people making decisions that will limit future bodily autonomy on their part, right?
Yeah, that's their autonomy. Yeah.
Okay. So do you support slavery?
That's somebody else going ahead and executing violence against another person. That's not autonomy.
So if
I think you're
somebody
trying to go for
chooses,
indentured servitude, right? Because that
no,
actually
I'm not.
is something
I'm talking about
Well, no,
slavery.
because
I'm
slavery
talking about
is
somebody.
committing violence against another person by owning them. That's violence in my eyes. That is
So-
not
so-
autonomy. That's
well,
like,
hold
I don't
on.
know how you would even consider that autonomy.
Yeah, so it is autonomy if the slave in this case
Just
signs a
chooses to be a slave.
contract.
Also, indentured servitude, not slavery.
Nope, I'm talking about slavery.
No, you're
They
talking about indentured servitude because of a
no,
slave
I'm talking.
signs a
No, hold on.
contract.
Let me complete the statement. Okay.
Okay, continue.
So the slave basically signs a blank check to the person who's then going to own them for the rest of their lives and can no longer make any more decisions. That's slavery. So you support that? You think that's okay? You think that's acceptable?
Does that allow for somebody to go ahead and retract their autonomy in the future?
No. This hypothetical contract would not allow that.
Yeah, that also. Yeah, I already did this, dude. I did this with the experimental drugs thing, and saying that somebody at any point should be able to go ahead and retract their consent to things that they previously consented to. Right? Just because somebody says that you can go inside them, it doesn't mean you can just keep going inside them if they don't want you to. Right?
Well, but this presents an inconsistency with your previous point
it's not an
about
inconsistency because you're going.
Well,
in and
okay,
like,
so I can demonstrate the inconsistency if you let me talk.
I don't.
So this presents an inconsistency because it is actually you are making it impossible for somebody to retract their consent to a maid. They cannot retract that consent, but yet you still support people being able to do that.
All right, so first off, let's go ahead and let's address the elephant in the room that I don't really think a lot of people just sign off their entire autonomy to begin with, right? To begin with. So, like, let's say that this is probably a niche argument that I don't think even characterizes slavery to begin with, which is, I think, what does make a fallacy here. But again,
I could bring up an example.
Hold on. So let me tell you where I'm getting this argument from. So this argument is actually an argument made by the well-renowned libertarian thinker Walter Block, who unironically argues for slavery in the position I am laying out.
Yeah, I don't like him. I think he's a moron and a dipshit.
Well, so obvious. Okay, so are you a senior fellow at the
Your
Mises
mic.
Institute?
I'm gonna. Your
The
mic is
ability to
killing
consent to
me.
things means you also have the ability to disconsent to things when it comes to that life. We do the best that we can with consent, right?
Yeah, so
But we're never
you
gonna
cannot
have true- we're never gonna have
disconsent to
true-
maid.
Wait. We're never gonna have true consent. Can we ever have true consent? Can you know what's going on in another person's mind ever?
You can approach it, but the point is you cannot retract your consent to maid after it's already happened.
My man, real quick, I'm asking you, what word did I just write down? That is the only word I'm thinking about, right? Can you know that?
No, not. I don't have complete knowledge, but I can't have knowledge of what you're thinking of in certain circumstances, given previous statements you made.
So you understand that there are limits to consent, then, right?
I understand that there are limits. My criticism to you is that you're being inconsistent in how you're applying consent in different cases.
How so?
Because you're, like I said, you're saying that in order to consent to something, you have to be able to retract consent. However, on the other hand, you are supporting a position where you are able to put consent into something made, and then after made occurs, you can no longer retract your consent.
Okay.
To that point. This is a contradictory position.
No, this is what we do the best we can, not, feeble over small petty arguments with this. Again,
this isn't small. This is no. Hold on. This isn't small. This isn't small. This is the entire argument. This is your entire position. Yes, your entire position is based around bodily autonomy. When I point out that you inconsistently apply the principle, that's not minor. That's not a quibble. That is your entire position shown to be self contradiction.
Okay, then I'll fix it. If you can't retract consent because you're dead, then you can't retract consent. If you can't retract consent because you're dying, you can't retract consent, because that's how the world works, right? Right. That's how the world works. But in the slavery example, you can retract consent because you're still alive, which is why I think this is a fallacious argument. And once again, yeah, we can all make decisions there about what if I were to go out there, and just decide to, I don't know, find some heroin and have a grand old night doing heroin. I would actually be okay with myself doing that from my standpoint. I don't think it's a good thing that somebody does it. Could it get me killed? Yes, but I consented to doing it. All right, it wasn't like somebody injected me with the heroin to begin with.
Primal, do you want to tag team in on this by chance?
It's in terms of just consent, like I agree. Like if you have the ability to withdraw consent at any point, it's a different argument than if you've given up the ability. And if you're incapacitated, then you no longer have the ability to consent or not consent anymore. I think that's been shown in a multitude of environments of once you're incapacitated, like you are no longer a party consentable or non-consentable. You kind of just are at the mercy of what's already been laid out.
Well, hold on. So before I'm kicked off, I have one other point for Reservoir. So you think that it is wrong to prevent people sinning?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's wrong to prevent people.
Okay. So do you think murder should be legal?
No, I don't think murder should be legal. Do you want to know
Well,
why? that
okay.
is?
So
wait,
yeah,
real quick. I
well,
want you to use your
once
big knowledge, 'cause
again,
you know
you're
what I'm talking about. Why did I say murder was bad earlier? Did you hear that?
I don't know, and it's frankly
You just said it,
irrelevant
like,
because
recently.
this
It was
presents
like
another
an hour and a half
contradiction.
ago. You might have forgotten it. Okay, that's fine. I understand. But the reason why murder isn't good, it's because it's one person going ahead and violating another person's consent. Right.
Okay. So just to be clear, you
Why is murder
actually
bad to
value
you? Can you
bodily
explain to me
autonomy.
why murder's bad to you, buddy? Why is murder
so-
bad to you? No, actually, no. Right now, you're trying to go ahead and put me into these things. Why is murder bad to you?
My position on this is irrelevant. Anyway,
no, it's
so
actually relevant. I'm actually really curious
So the
because I
point I'm
want to show
trying
that
to
you're
make
using
here.
fallacious argumentation while pretending
So
like I'm doing
so
such
the
things.
point. I have actually not made an argument.
Well, I know
except
because you don't know how to. It's okay. You did make an argument, by the way. You said I was inconsistent. That was an
It's
argument.
called an internal critique.
So that argument was not relevant. to murder.
It is.
So the point I'm trying to make here is Reservoir actually values bodily autonomy higher than what he believes is his God's commands. He actually thinks that bodily autonomy is superior to preventing sin.
No, I think bodily autonomy is superior to allowing God's will if we're going religious with this. And I don't think that we're supposed to interrupt God's will if we're going religious with this.
So is it God's will that Cain killed
It was
Abel?
God's will to give you fucking one brain cell when you woke up.
Was it God's will for Cain to kill Abel?
For Cain to kill Abel? Absolutely, it was God's will to do that. He willed it. It happened, did it not?
Okay, so that murder should not have been prevented.
I mean, it wasn't, did it? And he didn't prevent it, did he?
No,
Wait,
that's not answering my question.
no.
Should Cain have been prevented from killing Abel? Should Cain have been prevented from killing Abel?
Of Abel.
That's irrelevant to my question. You aren't answering my
Why
question.
is it irrelevant to your question?
Should the
Once
murder
again,
of Abel have been
you're trying to tell me
Should the murder of
my
Abel have
argument
been
is
prevented?
Go one at a time because his
this.
mic is popping.
Once again.
Should the murder
Rachel,
of Abel
Ticky
have been
Tack,
prevented?
do you want to?
Nothing with anything. You're worse than the sophists.
Yeah, so you aren't answering my question.
You're worse than the sophists.
Should
You
the
don't,
murder
you're not
of
actually
Abel
saying
been
anything,
prevented?
dude. You're not engaging with this God's will argument that I'm making in the first place, and that's fine. Just admit you're a sophist, and I'm going to dismiss you just as well.
You're not responding to the argument, and then you call me a sophist. This is actually absurd on its
To
face.
the office, I literally did. You're not responding to my counter arguments to begin with. I'm not doing this stuff.
So I asked you a direct question, and you answered a question I didn't ask. So the
Would
question I'm
Rachel or
asking-
Ticky? Hold on a second, Adam. Would Rachel or Ticky Tack like to tag in on that side and give a thought?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
Okay. The only thing I want to just say is it's not God's will that Cain killed Abel. That's Cain's free will exercising it over and above Abel's.
God giving Cain free will was God's will.
Pardon me?
God giving Cain free will was God's will.
That's correct.
Okay.
And what Cain decided to do with that ability was his business. By definition, it would be his business. So not God's will. He used his free will for evil intent. And that's why we have this panel with disagreements. This is why we have a culture that I think's in some degree of free fall, and why moral relativism is problematic, and why it's part of the fuel that's driving this whole Maids doctrine anyway. It's the devaluing of human life. It's problematic, and we're seeing the results of it in our culture.
Yeah, and I just think it's the mere clinging to suffering as some sort of valiant or worthwhile thing. Then, if we're going to go ahead and do the contradictory trite statements, that's fine.
So anyway, so Reservoir, was it God's will for Cain to kill Abel?
Yeah.
It was? Okay, so God wills that sin happens?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are you, like a hyper-Calvinist?
let me
it's
allow
very
me,
complicated,
Adam,
but
to
like,
go
yeah,
ahead
it's
and
a type of Christian.
Adam, say goodbye for now. We are going into
Goodbye.
open panel mode here shortly.
Thank you, Adam.
So I'm going to put you back in the backstage.
Good questions, by the way. I am the mean butt.
I like the way you operate. Here is where what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of like shut down this panel and allow you guys to do all of your closing thoughts. If you want to hang on, we go into open panel dumpster fire where it gets absolutely stupid, and all of you have held seats for the time being, unless anybody boots you or so on and so forth. But it gets really fun after this moment. So, does anybody want to hop off of the panel at this time?
Yeah, I probably am going to.
That's fair. Ticky Tack, you unmuted. Are you?
I might stay for a little bit. I
fair.
would ask that everybody else kind of stays just for a little bit for the first like 5 minutes, but that's about it.
Yeah, I'll stay for the first 5 minutes. I'll give you that. Just as long as it's like I can kind of flow out, you know. That's
Yeah,
like,
we
I
don't go
wanna
in.
just, like, I don't want to just drop and you being like, oh God, how do I like reassess? I don't know how this stream
No
works.
debates,
Yeah.
no contentions, no arguments. I just kind of want to throw out some comments. That's all.
So we're
I
still
mean,
going to go into closing statements to like kind of close this panel. So if you guys still have a few thoughts you want to get to, I can give you an extra 10 minutes of just you guys, if that's what you want.
I'm pretty wrung out on just this with us. I think we've all had a. I do want to. Do we want to move just to closing statements?
Yeah,
on
we
this,
can
and then
do
we
that.
can get to the open panel.
That's fair.
Yeah, I want to say this. This was a spirited debate. I enjoyed a lot of this. I like the challenges presented to me by both Tiki as well as Rachel's to go ahead and do this, as well as some of the arguments that Primal made. Even like many of the callers, I think were pretty good. I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I do want to make that very clear. I come off a little bit aggressive, but again, I come from the Zerka lens where every positive thing that you say about something, you should say something just as bad about them, just so that way we can always find some new way to improve ourselves and our rhetoric. That said, I still remain wholly unconvinced that I can actually detract from my original statement of autonomy being a major source for this for me, and why I determine this from a secular lens. Again, autonomy with reverence to issues of mental health, poverty, and other detriments within material reality, which we must go ahead and actually do some solution for. I think the best way for us to value life is to value the living, value the people that are living day to day, that have every opportunity and every possibility. I think that we need to go ahead and do something in the West about starving children. And I think that the day that we actually can take care of our basic needs, take care of our fellow man, and actually do that, then we can truly have these discussions. We can truly get into that consent. I think that we're going to have a lot of trouble until then to truly get into these, because we have to postulate, well, how do we get there? What's it going to cost? Like, is there going to be a cost thing? If I'm looking at this from an ethical standpoint, people should have the full autonomy and decision making to go ahead and control their life at every single moment. Making a bad decision that you then go ahead and change your mind on is something that we need to allow people to do. We need to allow people to experience the ravages, just because that is part of the process. We can suggest to someone, hey, maybe, camel, go drink from that river. But if it chooses not to drink and it goes out and dries out, guess what? That's on the camel, not on the rest of us. We can always suggest the things that we want to do, but at the end of the day, it comes down to numero uno, the single sole person before you yourself, within these decisions, and we must be taking back our autonomy from anything that restricts us from that.
Thank you. And Primal to you. And Reservoir, did you want to do any plugs before?
Oh, yeah, shit. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot. I'm Reservoir on all platforms. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Twitch. I'm on Kick. I'm on Rumble. I'm probably gonna be on Twitter soon. I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of funny things too. Like the debate stuff is probably one of the least things I do, but Nev bugged me about this, and I'm gonna be honest, this was a lot of fun for me.
That actually surprises me.
What? Yeah, no, I just yell at my chat a lot of times, and then they call me mean things, and they called me fat so much I lost like 50 pounds in the last year. So it's one of those. It's kind of one of those energies. It's insult comedy is marvelous to me. So, but yeah, check me out 3 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, every Monday through Friday.
That is fair. Thank you. And Primal Studies, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate the back and forth. I think you all made a lot of compelling and good arguments. So Tiki Tac, Rachel, thank you for being on kind of the opposing side. Rez, appreciate you being on the secular side with me over here.
To make it hard for you.
Yeah. And it was good. It made me think about a lot of things, and that's kind of my call to action for people, is to think about these topics in a critical way and choose the path that leads to your best life and what you look for the best. I want people to explore all the options and decide what option's best for you. So I'll kind of party with that.
Thank you. And did you want to plug as well?
Oh yeah, Primal Studies, check it out. I do streams every once in a while on all sorts of a variety bag of topics. So go check it out. Thanks much.
Primal, I swear, is like the oldest person in YouTube. Like
I am.
everybody knows
It's
him.
all the gray hairs. You know, once you get over 40, it's all downhill after that.
He's just been here forever. And Tiki Tac, to you, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. So I'm still remain unconvinced on the argument I presented that within the last 30 seconds, we can define where consent ends. And I think it's still a valuable thing. But otherwise, I do feel like that this debate was very productive. There's a lot of challenging ideas that I had to face. And Rachel's Ghost, your heart is in the right place, but we got to like step up our game. And I really argue with the secular mindset of how things are built. When it comes to a shout out, I would just say go join the Crucible. You could find me over there in the Discord. And eventually when I start up my channel, you'll hear about it over there. And again, thank you very much, Sarah, for hosting this debate.
Oh, you are most welcome. Most welcome. And Rachel, last but certainly not least, she is one of my favorites in YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. I love having her around. She's part of the vinyl community, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, that's my thing. I want to thank all the panel, highly intelligent panel here, well thought out arguments. Yeah, I have no problem. I don't think I need to apologize for speaking, if it's perceived as emotional. I discern in our culture a general dehumanizing aspect. So I haven't moved from that. Jesus said you'll always have the poor with you. So there's a reason for that. We should seek the answer as to why he might say something like that, particularly Christians I speak to. And there's a lot of rules and a lot of commandments that are for Christians that aren't for the rest of the world. We have the covenant with God. The second, if you didn't make a deal with Jesus, the old story is you sell your soul to the devil, but in fact, you actually have to sell your soul to Jesus. It's the exact opposite. So I want to thank everybody for the conversation, Sarah especially for providing the platform and inviting me along to be part of it. It was great and a lot of fun. It's good to sharpen your sword, so to speak. So yeah, a lot of fun.
And did you want to plug?
Yeah, the show. I'm Rachel's Ghost on YouTube. I'm over on the X platform. I'm all in on Trump. I like Jesus a lot, and I like the Beatles. I rock and roll. So you can catch me 6 Pacific to 9 a.m. daily over on my channel. We talk about everything, politics, rock and roll, and we'll talk a little bit about this. We'll do a kind of a breakdown on this and tell the kids what I thought about it.
Yeah, this was a wonderful panel, and thank you all so kindly for being sensitive to the topic. It is a very touchy one and could be triggering to very many people, especially in the mental health region or people just going through hard times, especially in today's economy. So I'm ever so grateful that everybody handled with care and moved forward in such a way where we could still be respectful to the conversation, but still get our points across. And I just want to give some shout outs to the super chats that came in over the last few minutes. Don Juan comes in with the $4.99. He says, been to the Mises Institute and have met Walter Block, but even he would say this is a good theory. There is no fallacy of his premise. Will he agree? And forgive me if I mispronounced any of that. And comes in again with another $4.99. You can't have a right to euthanasia because it wouldn't contradict the right to life. Even in the hierarchy of rights, to live is higher than the other option. And stepping in again one more time, blaming God for humans' problems, LOL, straw man. And I think that was referring to the Cain and Abel moment. Reservoir needs Aquinas. Coming in with the Aquinas staple. Straight from Don Juan himself. We love you, Don Juan, for the reminder of Aquinas for everybody on panel. And camels don't have free will because they don't reason. Fair assessment. And coming in one more time, Andrew Wilson doesn't understand rights because the Ortho Bros got their rights taken in 1453 by Turks after they took Constantinople. Rights is Catholic concept. And Ticky Tack, if you have anything to add to that, I will give you the moment.
Nah, I'm not going to speak ill will.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the night. Rachel, I believe you are stepping away for now, or are you hanging on for the final few?
So are we good, ticky-tack, or did you want an extra 5 minutes, or how are you viewing things?
I only have a really quick comment in that I actually didn't have a position on this debate until about 3 days ago when I was asked if I wanted to join in on it. So you guys made some really compelling arguments. I would actually say particularly Corinth, when he came into the do not resuscitate argument, that definitely was something I had to contend with. And generally speaking, I really am defaulting to my religion overall when it comes to, suicide being a sin, and that's the basis for my arguments.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
Rachel, any thoughts to that?
Yeah, I agree. I applaud Tic Tac for his honesty. One of the things I do always, I say I have a bias. I put it right out there so people know where I'm coming from and understand that, in the terms of arguing or logic or debate, that you can under my position saying, I don't believe that. That's what you believe. I'll find it good, but I don't buy it. And then I just go, that's fine. You have to find the truth and whatever. I believe in objective reality, subjectively experienced. You'll have to find out for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. All right. If anybody does want to hop off, I can go ahead and do that now. Rachel, I believe you were going. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much, Sarah. Bye. Have a great night, everyone. Bye.
Bye. And Ticky Tack, are you sticking around for a few more minutes, or are you satisfied?
I just need a quick break, but I'll be back here in a few minutes.
Sure. I'll go ahead and just put you in the backstage. When you're ready to come back on, go ahead and come out of avatar mode, and I'll know. And I'll hold a seat for you. And then Reservoir, right? I want to say reservoir. That's what I was thinking.
You can say Resi or Wesley. My name's actually Wesley. I don't really care.
Fair
that
enough.
much.
I'm going with Resi. I like going by people's names.
It feels nice. Yeah, it's got a good mouth feel to it.
You're staying on for a few minutes. Primal,
I'll
are you
stay on
hanging
for
around?
a few minutes. Yeah, just find that critical rad theory guy. Don't bring him in. He's one of my chairs. He wanted to argue specifically with Tiki, and I feel like I think he probably agrees with both me and Primal. I just don't want to dogpile someone if they come on to argue otherwise, because I know who this person is because they've been talking about it for a little bit. So
that is fair.
But,
and I think Torsha wants to come in and get some. So link is pinned, baby girl. It is pinned for you. And then anybody else who does want to join open panel, please feel free to hit the link at the top. We will play this game where we will only allow 8 on screen at a time. If people get too crazy, I'm going to minimize it down to 6. We also do the fun little game of if you want to put somebody back in time out, you can do so. $1 a minute. If you want to revive somebody, same concept. Have your fun with it. Do whatever you want. We play the game. We have a good time. It is what it is. But I think we are all ready for the open panel dumpster fire.
Yes, and I do want to extend my appreciation. I do think that Sarah has been an adequate moderator. I think that there's times where she needs to mind her own fucking business in this space, but she's been an adequate moderator, and I do appreciate her having me on her channel.
Listen, I love you, the Raising Tomato, but I would kill myself doing more red pill debates, okay?
The Raging Tomato, at least she is attempting, she's trying to be a comedian. She's trying to be funny.
And I did just want to put an overlay up. I have critical rad theory. If you could just voice confirm and there's no peen flashes going on your end, that'd be great. If you're here with us, or unless you got tired back there.
No, he's still there.
No. Hello?
All right, just
How's it sound?
Oh, you sound great. And Spicoli, are you here, my darling?
Well, actually, I was waiting for Tic Tac to come back, and I promise I'll be nice. Persevere.
It's not about you being nice. I just know what you want, so I don't want to like get you like all disappointed that you're gonna be
I
jumping.
had
on
time
that.
to calm down. Let's put it that way.
I want you to have the best. I want you to autonomously decide the best life you can have for yourself.
That is a fair assessment. And while we're waiting on Tiki Tac to come back, Spicoli, I think you wanted to address the panel as well. Spicoli.
I've also
Spicoli,
changed
darling.
my Android form, just so you're aware.
That's perfectly fine. You're totally good. Spicoli, are you with us, my darling? Saranthus. All right, we'll put him back in the backstage for now. Anyways, I leave the floor to you guys. Have fun. Do your thing.
Can I start doing funny voices now?
Yes.
I mean, the
Sasquatch.
more the merrier, right?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised because more people were trying to jump on earlier, and
Well,
more
actually, this
people
is a
were in
perfect setting. This is a perfect setting for me because I've seen other formats with basically the Brady Bunch setting, when you have nine heads yelling to each other. So I'm actually enjoying this setup, and this is pretty much what compelled me to join in.
Oh, good. Well, normally we are like a room of 10 going crazy, but we decided to kind of reformat Mod Monday a little bit to where
Wise
we minimize it when it gets, if it's like, if everybody's kind of chilling and taking it easy, we'll throw everybody up there. But in order to avoid chaos, we try to organize it a little bit. And Don Juan coming in with $1.99, $1.99, so Spigoli can be banned. Well, that's only going to keep him backstage for 2 minutes, but I will set a timer. We'll try to bring him up we'll try to bring him up again in 2 minutes. And Tiki Tac coming in from the back with the $20. Thanks again for hosting. Thank you. No, I'm glad the panelists usually create the show. Like, we just piece it together, but you guys make it what it is. And I'm thankful it didn't get too out of hand, especially with this topic. So it was really nice to see that. Yes, that
Can I
was
do
really
a funny voice now?
Do your funny
You
voice.
turning all the frogs gay.
You're such a goon. And let's see. So Critical Rad Theory, you're waiting for you've been on here before. I've seen your name on here before, haven't you?
Well, this is actually a first for me. I didn't have my audio set up until tonight, pretty much like 20 minutes ago. So hi. But I've been around the circles of Reservoir, that loyal friend, and also other political discourse streamers. So I also chat a lot. That's,
Okay, maybe that's where I saw you then.
I also want to real quick do something for Caucasian here. I didn't realize it was muted before. Excuse me. See, the thing is, when you talk about the way that they're trying to turn these frogs gay, every one of you liberals that are going ahead and standing out there, stand against the true will of the God above, great almighty creator, Jesus Christ. And every single time you turn a dog gay, you know what, frog gay, you know what.
how many quizzes you could fit
A
in there?
dog to a white woman, and you know what they do with them. So here's the thing: no more frogs getting gay, no
Dude,
more dogs
three.
for white women. That's just what it is. Hey, this is Rezzy Jones. I gotta switch over to the next character now.
That's pretty good, but you got to really put your balls into it when you start talking. You got to get real deep down and get into it.
I know. Here's the thing. I know that right now, if I go ahead and do this too loudly, my father may get a little bit perturbed. He might get confused. He might think that I'm fighting off some sort of evil demon that has been spawned upon me by all of you internet freaks. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to go ahead and keep it that way. He's not worried about his baby boy.
Excellent.
We'll try Spicoli again. Are you there with us, Spicoli? Spicoli, where are you? I've never seen you so quiet like this. All right, we'll try again.
I'm not going to lie. This is the best I've ever seen out of him.
That is a good point. I'm not complaining.
I haven't
Primal.
disagreed with him yet, so this is a record.
Oh, goodness. Primal, to you.
Yeah, I was kind of curious to hear Critical Rad what he had, because I know he had been waiting for a little bit. Caucasian, not to not hear from you, but you got up on the panel once already, so I was kind of curious as to where Critical was coming from.
Well, it depends on, did you have a topic in mind?
I'm assuming kind of what we were talking about in the whole.
Well, I tend to deal with facts and reality, and not creed, superstition, mythology, or call it whatever you like. I deal with what's in front of me, and not what a mythical person would have said or done at a time where they didn't know where the sun went at night. So I'm not going to take life lessons from that, because they're not where we at, and this is not a base for a philosophical base for any kind of ethic or moral. Because let me remind you, there is a passage in the Bible that is basically an abortion. That passage, well, it's book Numbers 5, 11 through 31. So read that, and you will see God performing an abortion. So I'll let you. I'm just gonna put that there, food for thought. So that's. I guess that partly answers your questions. Where I'm coming from in terms of ethics and reality and how the world works.
Can I center the discussion a little bit? So when it comes to medically and I can't remember what the I stands for, but something in dying. The specific thing that kind of popped into Canadian news over the last couple of years, I think if it wasn't last year, maybe the year before, was the specific addition that was added to allow and include mental health conditions into consideration for that assisted dying. Now, I am conflicted. I do not believe that I have solidified my view on this, but I was wondering if anyone on panel has any sort of opinions or any, even if sort of just like some opening thoughts regarding the MAID discussion as it relates to mental health conditions.
As in mental health, or is the boundaries in regards to euthanasia?
Well, I think the idea being here is that the suffering could be characterized by like some prolonged mental health deficiency, maybe prolonged depression. And so I think where I struggle with this conversation is that I have not necessarily seen an example presented to me that makes it like that, like personifies the
let me
issue
give you
for
an
me.
example then. This is purely anecdotal, and well, I know someone who deals with fibromyalgia, and it's basically invisible. Nobody can tell what the matter is. It's basically affecting the tendons and muscle and nerves. So in terms of chronic pains, it's I don't know if you dislocated your shoulders or maybe a knee at one point, or anyone had experienced that. But just to put matter in perspective, this is a Tuesday for me. So
I do sympathize with
I'm
that.
not trauma dumping. I'm just
No,
putting
I
in
don't think you
perspective
are.
that I just my point of view of my relation to pain. So I have a very specific.
Respectfully, do you think I can focus the conversation a bit more? Like things that maybe things that would come from a diagnosis of like maybe from a psychiatrist or something, right? So like fibromyalgia, chronic pain, while I sympathize with those things, I don't necessarily think that that's where what I'm probing right now.
So Deep, are you asking kind of like the threshold?
Sorry, the sympathies
sorry,
are
critical.
Sorry, sympathies are, while they're well mannered, I understand. It's basically has the same effect as thoughts and prayers when there's a mass shooting. That it doesn't do shit. Excuse my
Agreed.
language.
Agreed.
So
I
I understand where you're coming from, but hearing these terms mean nothing, and for people that are extreme that got for whatever reasons in society got angry or
Yeah.
resentful in regards to how people treat around people can be treated around you. So I'm losing train of thought. So I'm just gonna
No problem.
put it
I
push
just
it back to.
I only offered that because I didn't want to I didn't want to pave over your personal experience in my efforts to like
No,
hold the conversation, right?
I understand.
That's why I
I
clarified that.
just
Right?
used my anecdotal evidence as an example, like as where I was coming
That's
from.
fair.
But I'm not trauma dumping, so don't worry,
You're
all.
good. You're good.
It's just for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah, no
Hey,
problem. Primal,
Neve,
what were you saying?
to come back to you, are you kind of asking for like a threshold of would this quote unquote qualified for assistance in this process if somebody had XYZ thing versus whatever the case may be?
Well, sure, possibly.
Sure.
Because I
So
think it's more
I'll
even just impressions.
yeah,
Because
I'll engage with that. So from a general perspective, I kind of was reading up on like the Belgian model and several other models, and essentially what it seems to come down to is there's an incurable condition that is terminal in nature. So I come from the perspective of, and I was having this conversation with Stacey a little bit earlier, but effectively, I think that and it's kind of funny because I'm leaning into the ticky-tack argument here almost a little bit of there's kind of hope of improvement. Like there could be, we can't predict the future. So with things that I'm of the stance of where there's a terminal diagnosis of, hey, we're 99.9% sure you're going to pass away within the next 6 months, where I think that might be an acceptable thing to go pursue. I think in the terms of, say, like a mental condition where we don't really know and there's an opportunity for improvement. So like prolonged depression, for example, like that might get better with environmental change or situational change or whatever. It may not, but it may. I would be in the camp of not allowing for those people to go through the process of assistance to end their life because I believe that there is a higher likelihood that they could be improved. I guess if that's kind of where you're going with it.
You're weighing the potential improvement against a known quantity.
Correct.
Well, with regards to depression, it could be medicated because it's an easy way. We have pills. We have pharmaceutical industry that's with gazillion of profits, so they have a pill for that. Meaning, the depression is something that's temporary that could be managed. We're talking about terminal phase here. Like, can we all agree that the threshold should be where you reach stage 4 cancer? There's nothing else that could be done that's beside you and pulling a plug. You have to. I just asked the question in general.
Well, I think there's a parallel being drawn between the suffering that you could characterize in a terminal condition to like the suffering that could occur through prolonged mental illness, right? As that's why it's included in as an option for MAID. So that's kind of where, for me, I feel like it changes things because I see a cancer diagnosis and I think to myself, yeah, like, you know, diminished quality of life, maybe a difficulty breathing, like some sort of impacted consciousness throughout that 6-month period of time where I'm like very favorable to the idea of somebody choosing the way they go out. But when it comes to like mental illness, the suffering and like characterized by suffering through something like depression, well, then I have more questions and I align more with Primal in that instance, but that's the internal conflict because who am I to say someone's suffering isn't worth their own, you know, liberty in that situation, right? That's the
and that's why I'm a proponent of freedom of choice in that regard, right? I feel like every instance is going to be somewhat individualized and everybody's experience is going to be somewhat different. So that's why I am in the camp of give people the maximum choice in that, but also put some safety parameters in it for things that I think that are somewhat changeable in the near term future. Like,
yeah.
Well, we could draw a parallel of Roe v. Wade, just to put an example, just to put the threshold there was viability. Okay, the viability being viable outside of the womb and incubation or whatever, but viable. the threshold should in reverse. The threshold for assisted unaliving should be terminal with no other recourse. I would actually suggest, recommend a movie. Everyone take notes if you want. It's a French movie. It's actually made by Denis Arcand. I don't know if you know that director. Anyway, it's the movie is called Barbarian Invasions. So it's basically this topic of discussion in a movie. So I just go off the top of my head right now because this when I was listening to all the arguments, I was like, wow, this is the plot of the movie. So yeah, go watch that movie. It's a long movie. It's gonna make you laugh. It's gonna make you cry, but it's worth watching because it goes through a lot of ethics, soul searching, and it goes through a different span of emotions. So trust me, you're not gonna regret it.
Yeah, I do want to push back on one thing you said about stage 4 cancer. Stage 4 cancer can be curable, given it doesn't have a great prognosis. But if somebody wants to go through that process and do that, I would absolutely support them in doing it. If somebody didn't want to go through that process, I would absolutely support them in doing it. I think the one thing is, I think it's not just no turning back. I think it has to be, there is something here that, the actual affect of suffering could be so high for the individual that they do not wish to face it. That is the one thing I want to carve into your definition here, Critical, that I don't think I necessarily agree with.
Which one is that? I'm sorry, refresh my memory.
The specific thing where it's like you're saying they have to be guaranteeably terminal. Again, stage 4.
Well, I say terminal in vagaries, but meaning like.
I know. I just think that it ultimately does come down that even if there is a process, right? Let's say hypothetically I get a disease. The only way I'm going to be able to get it is if I have to cut off all my lower, section below my belly button. I lose, the one of my favorite things in the world. And, when I lose that, that would have a dramatic change on my quality of life.
Well, that's going to affect your quality of life.
But that would be a treatment I might not want to do, right?
No, exactly. And that could be, while a bad option, it's an option, of course. It's not. It's a measure of outcome between you and your family and your doctor.
I agree with that. I just think that when you were stating the position, I think that what you were doing was very specifically loading terminal as one of the specific causes, where I do think that there are definitely places outside of even necessarily guaranteeably terminal. Like, again, there could be a ticky-tack 1% chance you're going to survive stage 4 cancer.
Terminal is a vague legal term for that reason. So it could be interpreted like terminal. Is it like you're being given an estimate of 6 months, 3 months, like something like that. Where that's where I sit in terms of it could be interpreted, but as long as we have a clear mid wall to stand on, there is a threshold that you could be interpreted one way or the other. However, I would not apply that to a religious perspective because we're dealing in realities and facts and feelings and families. There's no that's it. The Sky Daddy won't intervene because, again, thoughts and prayers. So I just wanted to put that in.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to just make that one kind of clerical change because again, critical, we do hang around some certain areas, and there's this demonic word that people keep saying called nuance, and I despise it. But when I'm dealing with people around us, I think that it's best often for us to.
Well, that's the beauty of free speech. allows you to be to see who is against you.
Exactly, and it allows me to go ahead and argue against them against me, and back and
There
forth
you go.
until we go ahead and learn to live with one another, right?
So, Critical Rad, you had an argument for me?
Yeah, you're so fortunate because I calmed down a lot, and I kind of gotten. That's why they had like a very choice for music while you wait. It's because they want you to forget. All right, so I just wanted to point your attention. I saw you look at your camera for a minute. So for the religious perspective, neither of us are doctors. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So neither of us will be dealing in expertise or facts. We're just going to talk anecdotal feeling and common sense, quote unquote. All right. Okay. Can we agree with that?
No, not necessarily, because we can actually spend time going through the research ourselves and make critical thoughts against the information we have available. It doesn't require a title or profession. And
yeah,
it absolutely does. Because there are rules, guidelines, an oath of do no harm, and the other I forget. But
here's how I like to describe it: is that I would not be able to be confident in going and diagnosing and treating somebody's illness. But when it comes to a particular topic of whether a particular procedure is beneficial or not, I believe that I could actually make critical thought on that based off the studies that are available.
Okay, but I hear you. So we're not talking giving a diagnosis. The expert has spoken. Basically, we're dealing with said diagnosis. So I'm gonna use your terms. The soul searching basically is what your family is thinking about it. You need to talk to your family because they are the ones you're gonna leave behind. So what they want is basically you want them to understand. You want to make him look your way, if that makes sense.
This message is sponsored in part by.
Sorry, I had to do it.
That was
Just too
very,
slow. We had to keep. We've lost so many viewers.
But I was like, what's going on?
Show the women's one. Show the women's one. They never thing.
This one?
Yeah, that's the one I like.
Tomato, fierce and red, juicy curves,
This message is sponsored in part by.
This message is sponsored in part by. This message is sponsored in part by.
Oh, that was totally a lesbian clip.
I mean, I grew up on a horse farm. I'm just saying. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I had to reattract the viewers. We lost so many in like the last 10 minutes. They're all just like,
We need to start yelling some more. We need to start yelling some more.
It's not even the yelling. It was just it's nothing against you, my lad, but it was just the very monotone voice asking and question and talking, and it was just like.
Look, I for
If you're
one
going to do
think it's
monotone, you have to do it properly.
crazy that people base their
I am.
entire lives around a book. That might just be me. I think it's crazy. Anyone else?
You know, nothing makes me
Not
want to
wrong.
live. You know, I found the solution, Sarah. If you could just post those short videos in some of these terminal wards, then people might, especially gentlemen, might find the will to live just a little bit longer.